Assessments.
Call Wilmer City Council meeting to order for Monday, August 15th. Roll call.
Ready over here. Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Rick Fagerly.
Here.
Julie Osmus.
Here.
Tom Butterfield.
Here.
Michael O'Brien.
Here.
Justin Osk.
Here.
Vicki Davis.
Here.
Andrew Plowman.
Here.
Audrey Nelson.
Here.
All present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have a legislative update from Senator Lang and Representative Baker. And so we have a full agenda tonight, like we were talking last week. And
So keep it
as you
short,
can-
yeah.
As you can see, you have a lot of your constituents here.
We do.
so-
It's good to see
Yes,
everybody.
yes. So go ahead, man. We're glad
Mr.
you're here.
Mayor, members,
Actually, I was gonna have Leslie introduce you, so.
I know
Ms.
you were,
Valiant?
but that's okay. You did a fine job. Go right ahead, Dave. Andrew, thank you.
And thank you, members and council and everybody that's here tonight. I know that we are kind of a last minute addition to the quick minutes tonight and the agenda. Senator Lang and I wanted to come and just talk about a couple things that we are getting prepared for. Should we be going back to St. Paul this year? One of the things that we did talk to staff about was we're both very committed to try to get a bonding bill done that did not get done this year in our regular session. We are still actually hopeful that we could get called back. And if we do, I will tell you that we are supportive of getting that done. The longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. That is one thing that we wanted to come and face the council firsthand because water rates are really important here in Wilmer. One of our lead projects on that was our water utility treatment processing for the water treatment. So that was something that both Senator Lang and I worked very hard on with other things, but that was at the top of the list. So we can talk about a couple other things, but I'll let you kind of just.
Yeah, I think more than anything, when we talked to just last week, we talked to the mayor and the city administrator and just kind of were going over the way that the session came to an end kind of unsuccessfully. I mean, we highlighted some of the areas where we had some success, but for the most part, in a bonding year, when you don't get a bonding bill done, it's unsuccessful and it's kind of depressing, to be honest with you, especially when we had so many local projects in the bill. What I would say is that, yeah, I think a large majority of the legislators that on both sides of the aisle are probably willing to go back and get a bonding bill done prior to next year. That being said, there's only one guy that can call us back for a special session. So if the governor doesn't call us back, we don't go back. Also, I think, and we talked about this a little bit, Mr. Mayor, about the fact that I believe a bonding bill would happen early in session. There's a lot of appetite, again, on both sides of the aisle to get that bonding bill finished, to get something on paper passed to the governor's desk, January, February, early in the session. And really, part of that reasoning is we don't want to lose another construction season. So we talked a little bit about why the bonding bill in the session ended the way it did. I don't really know if that, it's kind of a little bit of inside baseball. But realistically, at the beginning of the session, we were so far apart. We're so far apart on priorities. There was a lot of infrastructure projects that us in the Senate and that we had. I mean, the bill was sitting on the desk at the end of session, and there was a lot of cash projects in there that normally do not qualify for bonding that were in the bonding bill and were part of the final deal that just would not have passed in the Senate is really what ended up killing it. So
I think part of it was just we had a lot of ties with the tax bill was kind of interwoven with that. And so there was that inability by all of us down there in St. Paul that got this done. So again, we tried, we didn't get it done, but it's something that we need to get done when we go back. So we're here to tell you that we're sorry it didn't get done, but it's a high priority for us. If we get a chance to go back ourselves, it's got to get done. There was not a big disagreement about the amount that we were going to spend. We're in that $1.4 or $1.5 billion, one of the largest bonding bill in state history. We were ready to do that. But it had to come with some other things, and frankly, the House didn't pass that tax bill that we were hoping for, and we could have made everything else kind of flow through pretty well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, and one of the big sticking points for myself was if we don't get social security tax elimination, I'm not voting for it. And that was in the tax bill. The governor had said he would sign it. We were this close, we'll get it next year.
One last thing, I know you guys have a busy agenda, but we also, and I personally wanted to say to you also, we did get some things done. We got the frontline worker bill passed. We got unemployment insurance taken care of from federal dollars, so it did not hurt our employees that had been off on workers' comp unemployment insurance for the COVID period. We got that fixed. That was a major part of this bill. We also passed this edible cannabis bill, and that was not fully baked, frankly. And now you're dealing with something in Wilmer here that you shouldn't be dealing with in a way that's partially put together. We failed our cities, our communities in this way. I have shared with you, Mayor, and with the administrator that I hope that you delay these decisions. I hope that we wait to go back and fix what didn't get done properly. There was no tax ramifications. We didn't have any revenue coming in for this that would help testing the cannabis and the THC levels in this cannabis. So I'm hoping cities and municipalities and counties that are having to make these decisions will wait for us to go back and do it right. And so you should not have been had to put that on you right now, but I appreciate a lot of the cities are waiting and pausing and holding back until we actually do our work when we go back in January. So that's another high priority that we're going to do. So for that, we're sorry for that. We're going to go back and fix that.
I have to tout the veterans bill. I did get that done.
That's a good one.
That's the first time in Minnesota state history we had a veterans omnibus bill that got passed. There was $65 million of spending in that, which is, believe it or not, in the realm of veterans, that is a huge sum of money. And I know it's a very politician thing to say that $65 million isn't a huge sum of money, but it is. So that was something that I've been trying to tout because I was directly involved in that. It's never been done before. So we got that done. I used my annual training as an excuse to get it done, and the politicians bought off on it. So.
And with that, and again, as normal, Mr. Mayor and members, we plan, if we are elected in November, to come back in front of the council to make sure we hear from you firsthand before we go back in January. So we can cover more things that way. We're happy to take any questions, but I do know your time is very limited tonight. So we stand for questions.
Okay, thank you guys both for being here. Do appreciate that. Appreciate you standing up and coming in front of us. In taking responsibility for the failure on the cannabis issue. It is an issue that we have on our agenda tonight because, we do have 3 shops open in Wilmer right now. So, while it's easy to say, let's push it down the road, we really can't because it's in front of us and it's staring down our throats. And if we don't do something, we have to lean on staff for that. So, but I want to open up to council. Any questions for elected folks?
There's no way we answered it that well.
Well, I think they're seeing a heavy agenda. Thank you guys for being here. I know you guys had to come special for this, and it was a quick meeting, but it's a nice update, so thank you for the update, and stay in touch.
We stand ready.
And stay in touch with Ms.
Pleasure.
Valiant.
Thank you.
And Mr. Box, and make sure that you keep those guys posted what's going on, because they inform us as well, so thank you
Appreciate your
guys.
time, members. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, we have consent items. Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the consent agenda tonight, we have consider approval of the city council minutes of August 1st, 2022, the Board of Canvas minutes of August 11th, Wilmer Municipal Utilities Commission minutes of August 8th, Planning Commission minutes of July 20th, an application for appointment to the Planning Commission of Kelsey Voska, accounts payable report for July 26th through August 5th, special event on sale liquor license holder Spurs for Community Festival, and update on a timeline for RFPs for fiber to home projects.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay.
That resolution passes. Mr. Box, I did not get the,
Yes, I have that for you.
Okay, we have our next item is the open forum. In the open forum is an opportunity for individuals within the community to address the council on issues that they choose to address the council with. We ask that those items be items that are on the agenda, and it appears that the reason that people have placed as to why they're here are for that item. The other thing that we have is that it's a total of 15 minutes, so it's not open-ended, so at 15 minutes, we will stop the conversation. And each group is allowed 3 minutes and no more than 3 individuals speaking to the same issue. Okay? And so in front of me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 people here that want to talk about the rezoning, and we're only going to allow 3. And so I will give you time to caucus if you wish to have somebody present or not present. But there's 3 of you that will be able to present. I'll give you a couple minutes to caucus. The people we have are Mr. Swenson, Ms. Luck, Ms. Schultz, Sorensen, Carlson, and Lang. And so 3 of you will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each.
Should we step out in the hallway to the?
That's fine. You have about 2 minutes. Yes, that's fine.
Oh, they're gonna make her go over that.
Staff, do we have the timer ready for when we get ready?
Yes.
It's the same issue, right?
So they're upset about it.
No.
Can't go on?
You ready?
Okay,
Okay, my name is
Mr.
Roger.
Swenson?
Pardon?
Mr. Swenson, I just need you to state your name and whether you reside within the city of Wilmer or not. And we do have a timer, and it will go for 3 minutes.
Okay,
And at the conclusion of that 3 minutes, if you're in the middle of a sentence or a thought, continue that, but don't start a new thought or else I'll cut you off. And you'll just hear a buzzer over there. It's not going to be real loud and obtrusive, but you will hear it. So
okay.
go ahead, Mr. Swenson.
Name is Roger Swenson and my wife Jeanette here. We live at 1702 Upper Trentwood. And it's in Wilmer, of course. And our issue is that for the last couple of years, Jeanette and I decided to move to a single level home and low maintenance and friendly neighbors. We decided it would be in Wilmer. We drove around the whole city and nearby areas. We talked to realtors and friends. We looked into building and decided on Trentwood area was the best place in the city. Nothing else even came close. Then found out that building a new house was out of our price range. Then we were lucky to find a previously owned home that we really liked and bought it. That was 2 months ago. We're very happy here and the neighborhood is great. In the past few weeks, I received 2 letters from the city about rezoning the area behind our home. We're not in favor of this and more so now. The information that I have is it's going to be a 3-story building, 100 feet from the property line. That would be 150 feet from our house, would be a 3-story building. It wouldn't be able to even see the sky. The pad area is on the roof. If people are talking, laughing, playing music, it'd be right in our bedroom window. There's a lot of land in other parts of the city for high-density multi-family homes and looking down at people's, and not looking down at people's living rooms. I don't know how many other multi-family homes are built in Wilmer, but I think there are none in the single-family dwelling area. This is going to drastically reduce the value of our homes. I would have never bought the home if I'd known this was coming. Warren built a great area, and it'll be destroyed. The city is doing a good job in bringing business, industry, and technology to Wilmer, and now we are taking away great places for these people to build. Please do the right thing for Wilmer's future. I'd like to invite the mayor and members of the council who would like to come and look at our house and talk about what I'm talking about. I'd like to leave this with you.
Mr. Box will receive that for you.
Okay? Any questions or?
We just take the information. We don't respond back to questions. We have our
Okay.
staff investigate it and then get back to us. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And who is going to speak next? And again, same thing, state your name, whether you reside within the community or not. And
My name-
then also, you'll have the 3 minutes.
My name is Knut Sorensen. I'm a member of Wilmer City Limits, 1209 Lakeland Drive Northeast. We received a letter end of July about the rezoning of a property to build a 216-unit giant apartment building complex very close to us. I don't have time in 3 minutes to discuss all the things that were brought up at a meeting about rezoning from about a dozen that showed up to that meeting, but I'll give my 2 personal biggest reasons after first presenting this. This is a petition to oppose the rezoning of 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast. It's been signed by 55 signatures, almost all of whom are property owners in that direct neighborhood. We oppose the proposal that is before the City Council on August 15th, 2022 for rezoning of the property at 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast from agricultural to R5 high-density multifamily residential district to allow for the construction of a 216 multifamily housing complex. This construction would greatly increase the traffic on our already busy road, especially during the school year when many use Lakeland to go to the senior high. With the railroad to the south and a stop sign on the north, we are concerned about the huge backup of traffic during the mornings and evenings, along with the real possibility of not even being able to get onto Lakeland Drive. Another concern is that the entire plot of land is a sloping hill. The entrance of these buildings will have to be somewhere along this slope. This is a safety concern as people traveling north on Lakeland Drive will not see the entrance until at the top of the hill, leaving little time to respond. Please note that many drivers during the school year are teenagers traveling to and from the senior high. We, the undersigned, residents on or adjacent to Lakeland Drive Northeast, urge the Wilmer City Council to deny the proposal by Samuel Herzog of Unique Opportunities to rezone 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast from AG, agricultural, to R5 high-density living. About 5 out of 60 did not sign the petition. There's about 125 in the neighborhood who have not yet had an opportunity to sign the petition. The citizens are speaking up. It's our hope that you will listen to them now and vote to kill this project tonight. And in closing, in less than 30 seconds, my 2 biggest concerns is that on an already busy road that is sometimes difficult to get out of one's own driveway, and for some of our neighbors, it's much worse than us, life and limb are at stake. And just a few years ago, as this road was done, I was still paying for that. The incredible increase in this traffic is going to cause this road, which is already showing signs of deterioration, to need to be redone. And guess who gets to pay for that? We believe that there are other property that could facilitate a project like this in Wilmer, even if at a higher price. Please end this planned development on 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast.
Thank you for your comments, and you can submit your signatures to Mr. Box. And then our final person to speak to this issue. In your name, and if you reside within the community, and then if you have anything to turn in, just get them to Mr. Box.
So my name is Brett Carlson. I have my wife, Spencer Carlson, and our 6-week-old Kinsey Carlson with us today. Dear City of Wilmer Planning Commission, my wife and I are writing in response to the proposed rezoning of their property located at 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast. We live directly across Lakeland Drive from the property where they're talking about punching a road in, so right on the corner where Pep's putting in his bar. And as a young growing family, we have concerns about the implications of this rezoning for the purpose of building high-density multifamily residential units and proposed entryway to the apartments. Lakeland Drive is already a very busy road, being the main cut across from the Civic Center Drive to Highway 12. Many of the cars that travel on this road do not heed the speed limit, making this already a dangerous road to live on. There have been many times in which my wife or I have been almost rear-ended trying to turn onto our driveway because people are unwilling to slow down on this road. Furthermore, there are many individuals living on this road that have kids or dogs that are at high risk for being hit. In fact, our neighbor's dog was hit by a car on this very road a couple years ago, and ours almost was hit as well. As responsible pet owners, we watch our dogs very closely, but dogs and kids can be both unpredictable at times. And this is very concerning to me. As a new dad, and as we plan to grow our family in this neighborhood, adding an additional 216 vehicles, or very likely more than that, vehicles traveling on this road will only work to add to this issue. Furthermore, there is already a backlog of cars at times related to either the train or people trying to turn onto Civic Center Drive, especially during the school year with school buses and kids getting off. Adding additionally housing units will add time to current residents' commutes and make it more difficult for police and ambulances that use this cut across road to get in places in a timely manner. We are also concerned about the environmental effects of this rezoning. I work for the United States Department of Agriculture, and from a professional side, not only will this get rid of the current farmland, which in today's growing food concern and trade is usually not in the best interest of our community. This will also affect the biodiversity that is present, especially with putting in a water retention pond that will be above the grade of our own house. There will also be an uptake in waste in the area. We already struggle with litter and needing to pick up other people's garbage from our yard. We would rather not have to deal with more, as this is not only unsanitary, but also bad for the environment. We feel that we have given you a lot to consider about the proposed rezoning of the property of 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast. But again, our biggest concern is for safety of our growing family and our fellow neighbors' families. We want to conclude with this last thought. If we can't change your mind today with all the support we have in the crowd to keep in this ag production, we at least urge you to consider changing the entryway for the proposed housing units from the Lakeland to Civic Center Drive, as there is plenty of space there and is non-residential area with most people taking the Highway 23 bypass anyway, so the added traffic will be less of a concern. This small change would alleviate a lot of the problems we discussed today and would give us more of a peace of mind. Thank you for your time in the Carlsons.
Thank you. Again, if you have anything to present it to Mr. Box. Is there anybody else that signed up that it says rezoning, but you were not here to speak of the rezoning?
Just take it.
Okay, I believe that I followed the intent of the rule that, as it's been laid out and revised. This is the first time we've had to do it since we revised it, so if staff is in agreement with me, just let me know that. Otherwise, I'll try to amend. Thank you. Staff, I'll have this for you. Next, we have public hearings. You all are welcome to stick around if you wish. We're going to go into our public hearing process. We have a rather lengthy agenda. Our agenda consists of 19 items, and we're on item number 10 at this point. So if you wish to stay, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you wish to leave, it's not considered unpolite to leave. So at this point, I'll open the public hearing to rezone Rockstep Plaza, second edition, from shopping center to general business. With that, I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to staff. Mr. Walker for opening comments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So at our last meeting, we came before you with a presentation for the rezoning of the second edition for the Rockstep, I guess for the Uptown Wilmer Mall. And tonight is just the beginning of the process to introduce the rezoning of the entire mall. So this is a separate parcel that is being platted out for an addition, and for a new business to go in at the mall site. And this will also remove that parking lot from the Uptown Wilmer purview. And so I know it's been a very big focus for a council member and a lot of people in the community about the state and the condition of the parking lot. This is part of the process to addressing that. Like I said, this is a part of a larger rezone that will eventually rezone the entire mall site and eventually take care of the entire parking lot. So I guess with that, I turn it over to Mayor Calvin for any questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing talking about the rezone of Rockstep Plaza, second edition, from shopping center to general business. Anybody from the public who wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, anybody wishing to speak to this issue? Check and make sure there's nobody outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it to council. Council, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the ordinance to rezone Rockstep Plaza, second edition, from shopping center to general business. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification on the map that we got, which is a second edition.
Need to load. I went away. All right, so it's the one like just south of Cub. Actually, it's not Cub. Cashwise. So it's the very north end of like the mall site.
So just the parcel north of the line?
Yeah, so it's the Rockstep Wilmer and then the very north, so parcel 959238331, I think. But that square parcel is what's being rezoned. It's going to be rezoned to a shopping center district. And so that's separate from the rezone of the entire mall. That's later to come.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what were you saying about the parking lot?
So now, like, the parking lot will be under new ownership, and so part of out parcel in the mall that has been working out in the parking lot's favor, and I think as far as the community is concerned, is that it being under new ownership, they're incentivized to upgrade the parking lot. Actually, I had a meeting with the property manager for the mall recently, and he was saying how it was used as a through street, and he was kind of frustrated about it. But by them out parceling like some of the parcels, like the Slim Chicken lot, along with this lot, the parking lot will be up. I probably will be paved over much sooner than it will be under Uptown Wilmer.
So who's going to pay for that then?
So the reason that this was expedited and separated from the entire rezone process of the mall is because they had a pending deal with a tenant that they were looking at. And so they requested the rezone prior, and that's what's triggering the rezone for this parcel separate from the rest.
So basically, it'll be the old Pizza Hut property that's going to get a new parking lot area?
That will get a new parking lot, but this is about like the Herberger site, that part.
And the mall's going to pave that?
The new ownership, but they'll be separate from the mall, but yes.
Did someone buy the Herbergers?
Pending, yes. Working on it. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you.
Additional comments? Okay, are we ready to vote?
Can I ask one more question?
Councilmember Nelson.
There is another slice that runs along Fifth Street there. That is separate from the parcel that's being considered right now, correct?
Correct, but that
Long and narrow,
correct, yeah, but that parcel will be included when the entire mall site
the
rezones.
other part.
Yep.
Additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, I'll open the public hearing for an ordinance for the sale of property to Justin Paffraff. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Unfortunately, Mr. Paffraff cannot be here tonight. He had a prior obligation that is out of state. But tonight is, I think I've gotten several questions today, and I think over the past couple of weeks about if this is about approving the project. And I just want to reiterate that this is not. This is about the 4 parcels being sold to Mr. Paffraff for whatever he intends to do. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about about tiny homes and plans and all those sorts of things. But I think I just want to clarify again that tonight is strictly about the land sale. I know we had a planning commissioner who pointed out the price of the project, and I think we assured him that one, there's a public amenity involved. I think in the need in the community for housing, and I think also that he admitted that this land has been in the city's possession for several years now. But yes, tonight is just to approve the land sale. I think once we get to the point of where there are specific projects or plans that come before staff, that will later come before the planning commission and the council as well. And so tonight is not the approval of any plans or anything. Tonight is just the approval of the purchase of the land. So with that, I turn it back over to you, Mayor Calvin.
Okay, so just making sure that everybody understands that this is a public hearing for the sale of real property to Mr. Justin Paffraff. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Anybody here to speak to the land sale at the mall?
It's not the mall.
Land sale for Paffraff, Pleasant Avenue.
Anybody here to speak to the land sale for Paffraff?
Okay. Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it to the council. Council, what are your wishes?
Make a motion to adopt, assign a number, and publish the ordinance for the sale of real property to Justin Paffraff.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Butterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So is there any special assessments against this property?
I do not know. I think like before the land sale goes through, I know City Clerk Thompson. Yeah, I always think about her first name. City Clerk Thompson. She'll definitely let me know. I think that came up on a rezone a couple weeks ago. So if that is an issue, we will find out before the land sale goes through. They'll have to be paid.
Okay, and then if he does construct something there, there'll be tapping fees hook up to the sewer
Certainly.
and the water, and he'll be charged.
Certainly.
those
Yeah.
fees.
I think there's a misconception that the standards and the rules that we have in town are being foregone for this project, and that will not be the case. Any project that goes on this site will be held to the scrutiny of all other projects.
Okay. Then what kind of marketing did you do with these properties?
So how this normally works is if I'm presented with a letter or an offer, I present that to you all. I don't go around marketing sites. I think in the past, no matter if it's $1 or maybe like a 20th of the land value, I have to bring it to you all. So that's what happened here. And so all of this is publicly available. Anyone could write me a letter or anyone, and we'd have to honor it and bring it to you all.
But we didn't actively have a sign there, contact the city of Wilmer?
We did not.
Wasn't listed with a real estate agency or anything?
Nope, this was completely initiated by Mr. Paffraff. He came to the city and he wanted to discuss. The price that he initially offered was less than what the land is being sold for. And we ended up negotiating a larger piece of land and a higher price.
Okay. Are we paying him a commission, or he's just paying purchase price?
I think he's paying the purchase price. That's a good question. We'll probably get clarity on that kind of down the road, but yeah.
Be nice to know that ahead of time, though.
All right.
Well, if he was paying a commission, he'd be paying it himself. And it's not a condition of the sale. The sale amount is $32,000. If he chooses to pay himself a commission above the $32,000, but we would not have staff or legal advise me if I'm right, but wrong, but I mean, we're getting the $32,000. We're not getting a realtor fee out of the $32,000.
That's correct.
Okay, but he is a realtor. He doesn't have a broker's license. So he has to have an arrangement with his broker to pay his broker a small fee or not, so I was just,
Or an attorney, right?
not an attorney,
Okay.
just wondering.
Mayor, members of the council, the purchase agreement clarifies that there is no commission to be paid out of the purchase price. If there's some other arrangement between the purchaser and another representative, that would be between them, but that's not coming out of the purchase price.
Okay, I just want to make sure the city isn't paying a commission out of theirs. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Butterfield.
Councilman Rick asked the same one that I was going on, assessment, not tapping fee. So I'm good.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. My question is actually a question in the purchase agreement, so I don't know if it's the next motion that I should
I
wait
think
for.
that's the next one.
Okay.
Additional comments? And this is on, to adopt, sign a number, and publish the ordinance for the sale of real property to Mr. Justin Paffraff. Additional comments or questions to the motion? Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay.
That motion carries. Next, I'd entertain a motion to approve the purchase agreement between Justin Paffraff and the city for the listed amount of $32,000.
I'll make that.
Mr. Walker, do you have any more comments, or are you good?
I do not, I'm good.
Go ahead.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the purchase agreement between Justin Paffraff and the city for a listed amount of $32,000. Discussion, Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. My question is under permanent easements. There's a comment made there like there's going to be an insert, and I'm just curious with what we had talked about and the stormwater, et cetera, what are the permanent easements and why it isn't listed there yet?
Yeah, so I know we're still kind of going over several parts of this, and so I know he was still under the impression that this was just to approve the price, and then some of the details are going to be worked out. But after talking to engineering, there is stormwater and sanitary kind of on the far east side, and so those will be listed. But I think that's on the vacated side. But yeah, and so then there's also the drainage pond as well that have to be listed as well.
So I'm just curious about us approving it before all of those details are in there.
No, so this is for the price. This is not. I guess like some of the things, because I know he still kind of had some questions about some of it. But as far as like the purchase agreement was concerned, he was ready to go as far as the price.
Ms. Valiant.
This, like Mr. Walker said, this is a purchase agreement, and as far as the permanent easements and such, these are 3 parcels, so in order for Mr. Paffraff to move forward, he's going to have to combine the parcels, and then all the easements and such will be coming through, the permanent easements will be coming through when the plat has been fully vetted, and they'll be added to the plat itself.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Baumann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the information on this, Justin. I think those are important comments that were just made by our city administrator and good questions that were asked. Just reiterating the fact that our city does a good job at taking these projects step by step, and we're not just kind of baking a big hot dish here. This entire project, and that's probably one of the reasons that, and I was asked about it specifically regarding the price, but that's one of the reasons that the price is what it is. Number one, that the land is just sitting there and has been for a long time. Number two, there's some incurred risk with this project because none of the plans or the easements or the actual planning for the development or what is hoped to be the development, none of that's approved. There's always, I mean, there's no contingencies here. We are selling the land outright. And if those things are not approved, then they're not approved. And the city makes no guarantees to make any of those approvals. So I think with that said, I think all things weighed, I believe it's a good deal for the city as well as a good opportunity for a local entrepreneur. So thank you for the information.
Additional comments or questions?
I will.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Councilmember Plowman makes some good points, but I think also we had a discussion last time too about if this project doesn't come together, that there's an ability for the city to repurchase at the existing price. And I just wondered, this isn't a fire sale, and so if the project doesn't come together, if we're still assuming the same things as far as the city being able to purchase it back at the same cost if the project doesn't happen. Is that correct?
Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. That's correct. There's a conditional option to repurchase for the city in the event the project does not proceed by the deadline in the purchase agreement, which is 2 years, period of 2 years.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Okay, Mr. Walker, does the city have any other lots out there other than these lots?
Yes, so on the map, the lots directly west that are just south of the park, those are also owned by the city as well.
So if someone were interested in purchasing those, they could certainly contact the city and we would be a willing seller as we're proving here.
Correct, I would have to bring it to you all.
Okay, so if there are people out there that are concerned about the price and you think he's getting a great deal, we've got some more lots for sale. We'll entertain the offers.
Plenty.
Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay.
That resolution passes as well. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Next, we have an assessment hearing for the 2022 street and other improvements. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time and turn it over to our consulting engineer, Mr. Vogie.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor and Council. As the mayor indicated, this is the assessment hearing for the 2022 street improvements projects. I do have a presentation I'll go through quickly and then obviously be available for questions. So just a recap of the project areas associated with the project. The areas highlighted in pink are the reconstruction areas, which consist of 13th Litchfield, 6th, 17th Charlotte, and Industrial Drive. And then the areas in blue, or the areas in blue, are the overlay, mill and overlay improvement projects. So a summary of the project costs associated with each of them. The street reconstruction has been broken down there for you. That was the majority of the project cost, which consisted of approximately $3.8 million. The sanitary sewer was approximately $1.18 million worth of the total project cost. Then water main coming in at $1.182. Storm sewer was approximately $794,000, and then the mill and overlay component of the project was $2.2 million for an overall total project cost of $9.215 million. The assessment rates and totals, this is a breakdown based on the street reconstruction, the sanitary sewer, the water, the storm sewer, water services, sewer services, and then mill and overlay. I won't read all the numbers for you, but ultimately the street and the storm sewer, sanitary, the services, that all falls within the street reconstruction. The mill and overlay is separate, so that's the only item associated with the mill and overlay projects, whereas the reconstruction encompasses all of those other items. So this is just a summary of what the assessment, who the assessments are levied against. So we have two types of properties that the assessments were levied against. We have private property, and then we have city or governmental properties. So the total assessed value of that $9 million was $2 million, or it's proposed to be $2,393,864. And ultimately, if you look in that private properties column, that 2.3 million, that represents approximately 25% of the total project cost. So as an aggregate, 25% of the project costs are proposed to be assessed. As we get into the assessment term and interest rate, council, as part of the bond sale, identified that an assessment term of 15 years would occur with this project. Historically, it's been 10, and I think the discussion at that time was reducing the burden as it relates to individual annual yearly payments. The assessment rate's been identified at 5.1%, and that's based on the bond rating that we received for the bonds. And then just a estimate for those in the audience this evening, based on that term and that rate, for every $1,000 in assessment, it's approximately $97 per year. So for example, a $5,000 assessment would be $485 per year. So that's just an example for people to get an idea of what that might amount to on an annual basis. So what happens in terms of the assessment payment policy? So this year, October 31st is the important date. Partial prepayments are allowed without interest prior to October 31st. In addition to that, prior to October 31st, the entire balance can be paid without interest, and that's for this year only. Following that, the balances that are not paid next year will be added to property taxes. And of course, the first half of property taxes are due on May 15th, second half, October 15th. So what happens if somebody decides that they want to pay their assessment off after October 31st? Ultimately, interest accrued through December 31st of the payment year will be added. So this year, if everything's paid off in full, there's no interest. Anytime after October 31st of 2022, interest will be a factor in the assessment. And with that, Mayor, I'll stand for any questions that your council might have.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and I do have the list in front of me of people who wish to speak. And I will call on you by the way that you signed up. And at the conclusion of going through the list that I have, and again, on a public hearing, you can speak as long as you wish. There's no time limit, within reason. If you start repeating yourself, I'll ask you to get to the point that you're trying to make or make a new point, but otherwise you're allowed to speak as long as you wish to speak to the issue that you are addressing. And with that, I will now open it to the public. I just want, Mr. Vogel, there's one thing I wanted to ask you before that, because this question always comes up. For 429, we have to assess a minimum of 20%, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll start with Nick Aker, I believe it is. And Mr. Aker, just state your name for the record.
Nick Acker. I would just like to submit a letter of appeal. We're being charged for all 100 feet of our property when the road construction started and ended with roughly 32 feet of our property, which would significantly reduce the bill. So I guess I just would like to submit a letter of appeal.
And submit that to Mr. Box.
Thank you.
Mr. Vogel, where did you go? Went hiding on me. So he's saying that he only has 32 feet on his lot versus the whole 100? Is that correct?
We can certainly look into that. There's 200 and some properties. I'm not sure exactly which one this is.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Brad Nichols. I probably killed it. Sorry about that.
Brad Nichols. I live on 832 7th Street Northwest. I'm just submitting a request to review the assessment.
Could you tell us what the basis is of your?
Well, we've already paid for assessments on 7th Street that were done from Ella to the fairgrounds. And the road that was tore up in front of our house was in better shape than probably 90% of the roads in Wilmer. So I'd just like to have it, submit this and review it, what they're gonna do and stuff.
Okay, I'm not clear of what his objection is.
Well, we're on a fixed income and we have other commitments this year to the house and stuff, and we just would like maybe to have it reviewed. So I'm just submitting this, all right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Don Heck.
Again, we want to get together the people on 7th or 6th Street to talk a little bit before we come up.
Okay, do you want to convene and,
Yeah, it was
so you guys, staff, help him out there, Gary. Go with Mr. Manzer. So that's all of you on 6th Street, Mr. Heck?
Yeah.
Mr. Roger Swenson, 1702 Upper Trentwood.
He was on that other one. He can sign up.
Mr. Luck, Upper Trentwood as well.
Yeah.
Ricardo Elviz. Come to the front. Do you have an interpreter with you, or do you? Okay. Go ahead. Go to the podium and just state your name and your address.
My name is Ricardo Avilés. My address is 510 Charles Street, Southeast.
Okay. And what's your objection?
Mike? No, nothing.
You don't understand, like,
Staff? Leslie, can you have someone help them and have them come back, please? We'll have staff go with you and help explain it. So go with our police officer, Mr. Anderson, and he'll kind of explain. Okay. Mr. Robert Perscella.
Robert Perscala.
Haven't saw you in a long time.
Yeah, I used to have to address you as chief. Now it's Mr. Mayor. Very nice. Okay, I used to reside in Wilmer. I live out by Painesville now. My sister and I still own a piece of property on Lakeland Drive there across from the Pizza Ranch. It's just a little triangular piece of property. To give you an idea of how tiny it is, the property taxes are only $4 a year. But we're being assessed, over $3,000 on that. I'm just curious as to how you guys calculate that. It wasn't real explanatory in here, and I really don't even have an approach from Lakeland Drive to that property. So this road project really adds no value to that property. It's basically just for a spot for outdoor advertising sign that we get a little revenue off of each year. I'm just wondering if there's any way to get a waiver on that, or at least have it recalculated, because this is like over 700 years worth of taxes that I'm getting assessed for here. It seems.
The linear footage on Lakeland that you have for that piece?
I don't have that in front of me. I have a parcel number, but
Parcel number, please. Parcel number.
956750030. So, but yeah, the long side of that property is on the street, but it's such a tiny piece. It's not buildable. There's really, there's no way there will ever be a business or a residence there of any type. So I'm just wondering if there's any type of waiver or recalculation that you get. I don't expect to get by with zero assessments, but it just seems unreasonable that, to get hit for over $3,000 worth of assessments on that little piece, so.
Staff is working diligently, I can see.
But, and this was just an overlay for Lakeland Drive, or did that get sewer and all that stuff there too? I guess I haven't.
No, it's just an overlay, and it's 52 feet.
52 feet. 52 feet and it's over 3,000, oh, because it's
Numbers-
commercial.
Commercial, it's number 61 on the tax rolls for Lakeland, the 19th.
You have that, Mr. Scott? Mr. Priscilla? Thank you, unless you have any other questions. So we'll be dealing with these as we go tonight, so
Okay.
you want to stick around probably.
Do I need to submit a letter to the?
You don't need to, but if you have one to submit, you can, but you don't need to submit a letter.
All right. Very good. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Next, we have Thomas Anderson. Oh, he's a Sixth Streeter. Mr. Todd Larson.
He's ready, though.
Oh, you ready? Okay. Now, everybody from Sixth Street can speak, not just one person. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
But I'm speaking for myself, but it reflects a lot of what other people are thinking too, and they'll have their say.
Thank you.
Thomas Anderson, 1709 6th Street Southwest. I got a letter in the mail saying what the assessment was going to be. And first of all, they said the time of this meeting was 6:61 PM.
Yep.
Which, unless there's a timekeeping method that I'm unaware of, it's new to me.
So what we do is we have to list the time so when we open the meeting, we then take the items on the agenda and then we proceed forward from there. But we have to have a time list.
It's just from a layman's point of view, seemed kind of funny, that's all.
Sure.
Anyway, I hope the numbers are more accurate to my understanding than if they're skewed in some way or figured out a different way. I'm just going to say what I think I need to do. First of all, the street that I live on was redone 14 years ago in 2008, as I understand it. And the street was in pretty good condition at the time, and now it was assessment then, now there's assessment again. Unfortunately, I don't know what that was. I wasn't living there at the time. But it just seems like the period of time in between reconstruction seems to be a bit small, let's say. As far as my lot is concerned, they measured at 135 feet. According to the county assessor, it's 120 feet. So there's 15 feet of extra stuff that's on there that's not according to the assessor's roll. That will amount to thousands of dollars of difference in what I'm being charged as an assessment. All they gave me was a $17,500 assessment, which I was aghast because that's the price of a new car, or at least a good used car, and even in this market. The other thing is that the storm sewer that they put in, they're charging me for 135 feet, whereas they did not put in 135 feet along my property. They put in a maximum of 15. Now, they're saying that I benefit from that, but I'm telling you that my water in the street from runoff went all the way down the gutter in front of my house, across my driveway, and around the corner. Now it goes down all the way in front of my house, across my driveway, to a drain. There is no benefit to me at all from that. And so I'm paying for something I will not be benefiting from. So I object to that part also. I believe that's about all I have right there, but that's enough to cause some really concerns about what their figuring system is that is put on the burden of the residents.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yep. And again, as I told Mr. Priscilla, and I didn't say it to everybody, but you'll want to stick around because the council will act on each of the objections.
I appreciate that very much.
Yes. Next, we have Mr. Todd Larson.
He just went out the door.
He's on the phone?
Could be a different Todd Larson.
Yeah. He left.
Okay, next we have, how's Mr. Anderson coming? Mr. Anderson, Mike Anderson? Mr. Don Heck.
Yeah, but there's other guys that got some information that they want to bring up on it. Did he already talk to you? Oh, then I'm good.
So do you have the same objection? He does, I mean, he's objecting to 25 feet of storm sewer.
Well, you finally, this is the first we've seen a breakdown.
Can you come to the mic, please? So you understand what we're doing is we're gonna take each of your objections, what your objections are, and the council will address each of those objections.
Okay. Well, tonight was the first that we've seen any breakdown of which all the items cost. You know, the letter that was sent out was just a lump sum here. You're gonna be assessed this much. At least tonight we got to see what the water's gonna cost, what the sewer was, and that. So that was my concern of,
You wanted to see the breakdown.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Anderson, are your parties ready? Sure.
So I think the questions he had was, he just wanted to make sure that it didn't have to be paid up front. And we talked about the assessment to the taxes that would be done twice a year, and I believe it's over a 15-year period, and that would be automatically assessed on the taxes, correct?
Correct. And the interest rate is 5.1%.
Yeah, we covered that too. He has the letter. He just wanted to make sure things didn't have to be paid up front.
Okay. So do you have, are you filing an objection at all? Or are we looking for clarification?
I think he just wanted clarification. He just wasn't sure on how the process of the taxes worked.
Okay, so let's have his, who's ever with him articulate that so that staff isn't articulating his answers.
Oh, yeah.
You can just say it. We're good. We're nice.
Well, he was like confused because he thought that he had to pay with the taxes, but he explained us the because he was confused because he said that he don't have all the money to pay here, and then he want to pay like by payment, and then he explained us that he have to pay 2 times on a year.
Yep. For 15 years.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, dice que tiene que pagar 2 veces al año por 15 años.
Sí.
Are we okay then? Are we
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Mr. Todd Larson, did he come back?
No.
Okay, Mr. Vern Stather.
Vern Stather?
Oh, we're here, right here.
Stoddard.
Stoddard. Mr. Stoddard.
Okay, I'm Laverne Stoddard from 500 17th Avenue Southwest, 6th Street. And I'm kind of objecting to this construction going on here because, first of all, we moved there in 2004. And a couple of years, whatever later, that whole street was reconstructed and we paid our share. I shouldn't have to come back here and pay 3-4 times what I did before. And we won't be able to afford that. We're elderly people. This was supposed to be our retirement home. And Social Security just doesn't cover that kind of increase. So the money's not going to be there. No matter if you put it on the taxes, it's still going to be a hardship.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't even know who my council member is. He never talked to me. So I have no idea who I'm talking with, but I don't have any breakdown of this whole thing. I don't know how many feet we're being charged for or what is included in what we're being charged for.
Sure.
So I would like to get some of that information.
So your council members are Mr. Butterfield and Ms. Nelson. They're your two council members.
I
And
have
so what I'm
talked to-
hearing is that you are looking for a senior citizen deferment?
We need assistance, but we're gonna need more information too. I don't even know what I'm being charged for. I don't know how many feet I'm being charged for. I have no paperwork for that.
Okay. Mr. Sam Moderman.
His neighbor. It's his neighbor. They're on the same street.
Yeah.
Sam Otterman, 501 17th Avenue Southwest. Mr. Mayor and council members, the request I have is that trying to understand how you assess a cul-de-sac. I know in your policy you talk about linear feet, and like on 6th Street, we're off from 6th Street, that's very easy to figure out. But when I look at the assessment, we have 4 residents in 17th Avenue Southwest, and we're being charged 120 feet for each parcel. Now, what is the formula for a cul-de-sac? I know that my understanding is that we have to pay for the footage going into the cul-de-sac, which is Mr. Anderson and Norm Schuler's side property, that footage plus all our footage, and then divide it by 4, and that would come out to 480 feet. But there isn't 480 feet. The copy of the plat that I have, when I added all the footages up, it's about 398 feet, just short of 400. If you divided that into 4, it should be assessed at 100 instead of at 120. So I am objecting to the 120 feet for all 4 of the residents of 17th Avenue Southwest. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mr. Chad Lean.
I'm Chad Lean, here representing the Candido County Fair Board, or Fairgrounds. Basically, we appreciate your improvements. As a nonprofit, we run on a pretty tight budget, basically working from April 1st to October 1st. And we would just greatly appreciate a reduced price on our assessments. But then I also have a couple questions on the actual assessment paper itself. It says our property address is 801, and as far as I know, I don't think we start until 9 something. And then the other one was the measurement inside that corner pie piece there, or was it the actual road part? Because there was that chunk that was redone right close, from the street to where our property line is. That is just a question I had, and if that was part of that, because I did talk with Mr. Odens, and he said it wasn't, but if it was added on here, I guess that was a question that I have to ask. So those are the couple things that I was curious on. And then was the Park Avenue. This doesn't have anything to do with the Park Avenue project that was done a few years ago. Okay. It just says something on here, so just a question I had, so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. John Honor? Okay, Ms. Rose Slaughter.
Back there?
Can I speak for her?
Yeah, you're both on here, so either of you can speak. She doesn't wish to speak?
No, she just signed up because she was with
Okay.
the group.
Mr. Slaughter.
Okay, James Slaughter, 1200 Southwest 6th Street, Wilmer. One of my neighbors that couldn't make it tonight mentioned that
well, they're interested in paying it this fall or whatever, the assessment. And then they would save so much money or whatever. And anyway, he was upset because the project isn't gonna be done this fall. And he thought he'd be penalized if he paid it all, and then he'd have to wait till next year, you know, or whatever.
So the project is projected to be completed this year, except the final lift. And we
That's what I
want-
tried to tell him.
Yep, and we want that to set for 1 year, so we don't have to dig down through everything, so that final lift can be nice and smooth.
Right.
So the project will be substantially complete, but will not be totally complete until we put the final lift on next summer.
Right.
Yep,
That's what I tried to tell him. And
that's correct.
so, one other question is, so is it, the assessment is approximately 100, or what is it, $170 a square foot? The total-
What's the linear foot cost?
Oh, 97 per what? $97 per square foot. Is that it?
About 170.
Per year?
It's linear foot though, not square foot, correct?
Yeah, it's linear feet.
Oh, linear.
The
Okay.
linear feet, so how it runs.
Right, okay. So if you got 140 linear feet frontage, it'd be up probably like 140. 140 is 140 or whatever, I don't know. 'Cause-
So it's linear feet for the street, linear feet for the sanitary sewer, and then for your water and sewer connections, it's just flat fees.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was a breakdown, all added together, how much per foot, not linear foot.
I can show you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
If you can read it.
Okay, next we have Tyler Wildermanson.
Thank you guys for having me.
I've got really bad handwriting, so I sympathize with you, but sitting here trying to read some of these names, I'm going, holy buckets. Okay, go ahead, Tyler.
I'm used to it. So yeah, Tyler Waldemarson, 1816 6th Street Southwest. My appeal is for the amount of the assessment. In order to issue local improvement bonds without an election, at least 20% of the project cost must be paid with special assessments, which is what was followed in this case. However, Minnesota law prohibits the amount of the assessment to exceed the benefit accrued to the property as a result of the improvement. In my case, I'm currently being charged $11,000 and have the wonderful option of paying the lump sum by November or over 15 years with 5% interest, which works out to be about $88 a month, which is a 50% increase to my property taxes. In an article from the Research Department of the Minnesota House of Representatives states, the special assessment cannot exceed the amount by which the property benefits from the improvement. The amount of property benefits from an improvement called the special benefit is measured by increase in the market value of the land due to the improvement, which means that the benefit is measured by the difference between what a willing buyer would pay a willing seller for the property before and after the improvement. A special assessment that exceeds the special benefit is taking of property without fair compensation and violates both the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Minnesota Constitution. Property assessed must enjoy a corresponding benefit from the local improvement. And in our case, we didn't even have a bad road to begin with, but it was all just ripped up anyways. As courts have made clear, the special benefit is the increase in market value of the land as a result of the improvement. In many published and unpublished opinions, the appellate courts have routinely upheld decisions that went against the city because the district court found a lack of evidence of a market value increase equal to or exceeding the amount of the special assessment. Especially with regard to street improvements, it can be difficult to demonstrate that there is an increase in market value as a result of the resurfacing or reconstruction. And that came from an information memo from the League of Minnesota Cities Special Assessment Toolkit. This same exact case happened in St. Cloud and was brought to the Supreme Court in 2018. In Stunt's case, the Minnesota Supreme Court held prima facie invalid, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, an assessment where the taxing authority, the town, had not attempted to demonstrate a relation between the amount of the assessment and the increase in market value of the property as a result of the project. Prima facie means something is accepted as correct until proved otherwise, which to me gives the attitude of, if you don't catch us, then we get away with it, which means that if you have already been assessed and you didn't object, too bad. But if you're one of those citizens who had work done this year or who has been given notice of work planned for next year, you need to object at or before the public hearing on your proposed special assessment. My property has also received damages from the construction. I was outside with my son watching a little excavator dig out a hole in front of our driveway. Part of the track was sitting on the edge of our driveway slab. I wouldn't even have noticed it, but I overheard one of the workers talking to the operator say that they had cracked the concrete. I would ask that the amount it would cost to repair this section would be deducted from my balance as well. Thank you.
Okay, do you understand the objection? Okay. Thank you. Next, Shelley Headland. I hope I got that close.
Yeah, you did. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And my legal name is Michelle, but I go by Shelley. And I'm here, I live at 1801 Southwest 6th Street. And I guess my objection is to the cost of the assessment. Mine is close to $20,000. It's about $19,700 something or another. And when I received the letter from the city, I was shocked at the amount. As was mentioned before, we had an assessment back in 2008. So I'm not understanding why we're doing it again, in such a fairly short amount of time. So I did call the city engineer's office and I spoke to, I don't remember her name right now, but she's the one that answers the phone. She did break down the cost of the different services per linear foot and then gave me that information, which I appreciated receiving. And so what I'm understanding then is that I need to pay the full amount. Otherwise, I'm going to pay that 5% over time. And I'm not sure if I understood it right. I thought the 5% was cumulative per year. It isn't. Okay. All right. I guess I wasn't clear on that when I talked to Judy at the city. So I don't know if you can do anything as far as what would work nicely for me is to do a partial payment for this year and another payment for the next year. But I'm not thrilled with having to pay the extra 5%. But again, I'm objecting to the amount. I was really surprised at how high the assessment is. So I think that's pretty much all the questions I have. The previous person mentioned the driveway, and I'm not sure, it kind of looks like part of the driveway has been, I don't know if they're going to replace part of the driveway or if the driveway is underneath all the gravel, but it looks like part of my driveway is missing. So that's just a question that I have. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure I answered that question correctly on the interest. So it's 5% interest, correct? And it's not cumulative like she said.
And correct. And partial payments are fine. You can make whatever payments each year you want to. You don't have to make what's ever on the tax statement. You can always pay more, and then you would only be charged the interest on the balance due, not on any other. It's not like a credit card type sort of thing.
Okay. Then I have Mr. Scott Schmidt. How are you?
Doing fine. No, I know that I got to pay what it is and everything. My problem is I drive bus, and I've been on 2nd Street for the past 2 years. And now we got 2 months to finish this, and they haven't even started on it yet. So what happens if it snows and we got to drive like on 2nd? Because they've been working on that for over 2 months, and that ain't done yet either. So what happens if it ain't done this winter?
Well, I've been assured that the project is going to have the first lift, correct? Mr. Vogie?
Yeah. I've been assured of things before too, but
Good evening. Mayor, Council, the completion date for the first lift of bituminous is in 2022. And there's no reason for us to believe right now that the first lift would not go on any of the streets being considered for, or be under construction this year. One other item, as long as I have the floor, I wanted to point out, if any driveways are damaged as a result of construction, they will be replaced as part of the project. So that will be completed as part of the project.
So, so Tyler, you should make sure that staff is made aware of it. So either talk to Mr. Vogie or talk to Mr. Manzer before you leave, and they'll get your address and can look at it, okay? Or anybody else as well.
If it don't get done, what do we do?
Well, Second Street Southeast is, there's more underlying issues to Second Street Southeast, and we don't have those issues on what we're dealing with right now. So we've been assured by staff that it will be done. Of course, you know, I understand the angle that you're taking on this, but, you know, the city will do everything they can to make sure it's done. And we have not been told there's any problems, so, which means that, it should be done, but Christmas should happen too, right?
If not, you'll hear about it at the bus barn, okay?
Exactly, yes,
Thank you,
yes.
sir.
And I'm sure it'll be every day. So, okay, that's the list that I had. Is John back here? Okay, and then is Mr. Todd Larson back? Okay, is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak? Mr. Halliday. Your name and address for the record, please.
Kevin Halliday, representing 500 Charlotte Street Southeast. It is a rental unit. I do want to thank our new engineer, Jared, for his presentation, but Jared, some of us are getting older. I didn't see any number up there whatsoever. Could we try and get them a little bigger next year, but thank you for the data. As most of you know, I've sat in a different chair on these projects for 30-some years, and I understand the need to set a firm price for your sewer service, and you chose $720, and the need to set a reconstruction per linear foot rate, and you have $87.75. But as we know, and we've just heard from Tyler, in that end, that final assessment total cannot exceed the value of the improvement of that property. And that final step in setting that total really needs to survive a staff review of benefits. And I think in this case, on this specific lot, I think you missed it by a fair margin. This is a 49-foot lot abutting Trott Avenue and heading south. Eventually, I'm going to have a nice handicapped corner with brand new concrete, uncracked, nice and level. It'll be fantastic. The problem is, you just built that 3 years ago. So there was perfect, unbroken concrete on my corner, and I'm having it again, so I don't see any value to that project. And as some of the economists have said about the new Democratic Inflation Reduction Act, it is statistically indistinguishable from zero. And that's some of the problem on some of these construction projects. The other problem on this specific lot, I mean, I know to the south, because I travel it to get groceries, all the way to Johanna. It was a terrible road, terrible curb and gutter. They're going to have a lot of benefits in stormwater, and they'll have a new handicap corner. They're nice. But when you have one just 3 years, and I don't know how you built it 3 years ago, whether you had a special grant. It was before COVID money, so I don't know, but to change that is nothing. The other problem on this specific 49-foot lot is that B624 curb and gutter from Trott Avenue heading south on my parcel was absolutely flawless. If you were just doing an overlay, you would not have lifted out any section whatsoever. If the engineer changed the arc of the road to move the stormwater to the basins quicker, and he may have done that, when he gets down to my lot, it would be at the same level because Trot Avenue hasn't moved. So again, it is mathematically indistinguishable from zero. There's no change in that benefit in the stormwater for this lot. I just think that there should be some review of some of these. Obviously, things get missed. As I heard earlier, somebody had 120-foot lot or whatever, and it should be 100, or you only did 35 feet inside of one. Sometimes they do get missed. I'm just going to object, for the record, because you got to come here first. I'm just going to object to this near $7,000 assessment on a 49-foot lot of this rental unit. It's not one of my stellar rental units, I know that. Stucco's falling off and so forth, but if an appraisal was done before and after, I really don't think a 10% increase is justified. That's all I'm going to say on the assessment, Mr. Mayor. If you allow me something else, I just want to comment. CenterPoint Energy dug a hole 6 feet by 6 feet, probably 8 feet down in my corner. And to do so, the digger had to put out his stabilizing legs to dig the hole and tore up the lawn 40 feet from the corner. They filled it that night, that's good, so it's not an attractive nuisance for the neighborhood kids. Michaels came the very next Monday and dug a 6 foot by 6 foot, 8 foot deep hole in the same spot. Only they turned their digger north-south and they put out their stabilizing legs and tore up the lawn the other way. And currently, and I don't know why, but there must be a reason, there's a 15-foot by 10-foot chunk of sod dug out of the lot. So I just want to put it at the attention of the engineer and maybe the inspectors here, since I don't know them anymore, they're not staff, to take a good look at that. I don't want to have just the grass redone from this project, the standard 18 inches behind the sidewalk, because you almost have to go 12, 13 feet from the building to properly put this back in its pre-construction condition. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Yes, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
Harvey Yukon, 1001 Richland Avenue Southwest. My request is that you review the 7th Street going north out of town past the fairgrounds. I have the last house going out of town, got an assessment of over $12,000. And the traffic going by there is college people, it's people going to Long Lake, to the golf course, and it links almost right up to County Road 41. And I would just think that that 7th Street should be part of County 41 because of the heavy traffic.
Okay.
So I guess my main request is I think it's too excessive for one property to have 12,000 with that amount of traffic.
And so what's your address?
Where I live is 1001 Richland Avenue, and the property that I'm talking about is 836 7th Street Northwest. That's the last house going out on 7th Street towards the nursing home and college and all that.
Sure, thank you. Okay. Anybody else that wishes to speak?
I'm Patty Vianney. I'm from 422 Charlotte Street, and I just kind of have a question. So they dug into our lawn, and then our sidewalk or that leads to our main door got all cracked. Do we replace that, or will that be fixed?
Check with Mr. Manzer, and he'll help you with that. He'll take a look at it. I'm not saying that he'll fix it. I'm just saying he will address the issue. Mr. Manzer? Okay. Mr. Versteeg?
Thank you, Jason Versteeg. I'm representing Dunnick Development, and we did submit an objection letter through our attorney, Howard Roston from Frederickson and Byron. And so I guess I would refer to this letter that we had submitted it earlier, probably a week or so ago. So we just want to make sure that that was
We do have, we have,
received
we have
and,
the letter received.
and entered into the record. So
We got it.
thank you very much.
Anybody else who wishes to speak to the assessment hearing? Yes, sir.
Again, Thomas Anderson is my name, and they were talking earlier about being on time with the project. They started in the beginning of June doing the project on 6th, from 15th going down to 19th. They're not even close to being done yet and haven't started north of 15th as of this today, looking at what they're doing. Nothing has been done north of that. That's 2.5 months that they've been working on just those few streets, that distance from 15th to 19th. I can't see them being done before winter going north in 2 months or less by the time October comes around and we get the snow. So I just want to point that out, that when they say they're on time, I'm in total disagreement with what they're saying. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to speak to the assessment hearing? Anybody else who wishes to speak to the assessment hearing?
Mr. Mayor, we do have a received written objection from the Cozy Inn, 1501 19th Avenue Southeast, that we will enter in to the official minutes.
Okay, you want to go ahead and read that for the record? I don't believe I saw that one.
Sure, this was received by staff earlier, and I'll read it from what was written here, so bear with me. I am writing this letter to appeal this project expense, which is listed in the attached letter I received, and states is in the amount of $15,502.50. I am a small business owner of a private motel, Cozy Inn. My business has taken a drastic decline in business over the last 3 years due to the effects of COVID, and I have struggled financially. My wife and I operate this business ourselves and are unable to afford any extra help to run this business and have difficulty even making our operating cost for this business. I fear I will be unable to afford the above amount of $15,502.50. My wife and I are over the retirement age of 65 years, and I hope you can appreciate the level of burden this assessment places on our livelihood and the gravity of our struggle to operate our business in the current economic climate to meet our basic needs. I thank you for your time and understanding.
Okay, anything else from staff that we received objections on?
None.
Okay, with that, I will, again, anybody from the public who wishes to speak? Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it to the council table. Close the public hearing. Council, what is your wishes? Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification on procedural. With all of the questions that we've gotten.
Well, we'll have to address each of those individually as we move forward, and staff has compiled those. Staff will read those back to us, but on the ones that are not objected to, I would like to have a motion to proceed with those. And then each of those, we will have to, each of the objections we have to rule on. In the absence of making a ruling on a particular objection, the council has the option of continuing the meeting on the ones that were not resolved. So what I'd like to do is the ones that are not being objected to, I'd like to get those moved forward. And then once that happens, then we'll go through those individually, unless staff has another idea for me. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, thank you. And I know this was a little complicated given the number of objections this year. My recommendation would be to take the motion on the assessment roll at the end of the process after the council has considered, I counted, I think, 17 separate parcels that had objections registered. So as you described it, Mayor, I think that is correct, that the action requested of the council today is that you approve the assessment roll.
But my recommendation would be to do that after going through the list of 17 properties and deciding whether you're going to rule on them tonight or continue the hearing for those properties to a future meeting.
Okay,
I just have some general concerns and seeking clarification
go ahead.
on the rate this year versus other years, how we're assessing both sides of the property. And then just strictly the amount of the assessment seems to be significantly more than it has been other years. And so it would, just the general concerns that I've received phone calls about and objections to, it relates to those types of things. And then I think it's been brought up a couple of times with where are we at with how this affects the value of the property and the amount that's allowed. And so I would like to see us have a general conversation also, just as a protection from any type of legal comments. And I know on 6th Street, I know there's something in the assessment policy also about how often you can be assessed, and I just wondered how their assessment is relating to that. So I have some general questions that I'm not sure I want to proceed answering specific questions on before that. And so that, I think, is a question for me.
Hey, Councilman Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all the concerns, I don't know how we can proceed. Staff needs to look at the individual concerns and then come back to us. So I've never had an assessment hearing like this before, so.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Well, I've been contacted by a number of people that weren't even here yet, concerned over the price. A lot of them. And we had some other rental property owners and everything else like that. I've been kind of staying out of this because I also own my property on 6th Street. So I haven't brought up any of my concerns on that either, because I kind of sent an email to the attorney on how I should proceed. And I kind of want to stay neutral on this. So I would like to, abstain from this all, but there's concerns out there. I thought there was going to be a lot more people here at this meeting that told me they're going to come because they had concerns over the price. And some of them were here and they didn't bring up their concerns to the council over price. And I was shocked that some of them left without even bringing it up from my conversations with them.
So on the price side of things, the council did see the numbers, and the council was told what the numbers were. You all saw this. And when we ordered the improvements, we knew what the price was going to be, and then we had the assessment hearing. Councilmember Nelson, to your concern about, the increased value to the property, that's been an ongoing concern for quite some time. And tonight we have 2 residents bringing that concern forward. That's been a concern that I know has weighed heavy on my mind for a long time. And I've shared those sentiments over the years. I think for 5 years I've shared those sentiments. So I'm trying to move these projects forward. So we do have a number of the pieces and a number of the parcels that do not have objections. And if we can move those projects forward, that helps us in solving the issue of, getting the projects moving forward. I'm trying to think back of when we had this many objections. I don't recall it, but I know there have been a few years where we've had a number of people, but I don't think we've ever had 17. So, Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the interest of efficiency, I guess, and effectiveness here, I'd like to ask either legal or our city administrator, what would be the recommended action if there's a number of items that that we believe that staff is going to need to review before talking about all the rest? What would the recommended action or motion be for tonight in order to move this along?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. And for any parcel or parcels the council would like to consider at a future meeting, my recommendation would be that for those parcels, the council continue the hearing, the assessment hearing for those parcels to be reconvened on a specific date and time. And if you do that, you might need to send a follow-up notice to each property owner, but you don't need to renotice the whole hearing. So I think that would be the recommendation for each parcel that you would like to come back and consider in more detail at a future meeting.
If I may follow up. Okay, and so, and that makes sense. If your first recommendation was to not approve the assessment roll before addressing these other issues, then essentially you're saying, let's move the entire hearing forward, if that's what we desire to do, to continue talking on this issue?
Correct. I would recommend that motion come first before consideration of the rest of the roll for which you have not received objections.
Councilmember Davis.
I'm wondering if there's an explanation why 6th Street is being done again when it was done in 2008.
Mr. Vogie.
Mayor, Council, there was some construction activity that occurred on 6th Street previously. It was related to water main replacement. This project includes sanitary sewer, storm sewer replacement, and it's ultimately one of the goals that both municipal utilities and public works and engineering staff are working towards to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. So there's a previous water main project that was done in that area, and at that time the sanitary sewer and storm was not replaced. Now we're replacing the sanitary sewer and storm.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, if the council is in agreement, is the ones that we can get resolved tonight, I'd like to get resolved. I mean, I think there's some of these that you know, the council should be able to resolve rather than leave the whole hearing open the entire time. Now, if council wants to leave the whole hearing open, a simple motion to leave the hearing open is all it would take. And if that passes by a majority of the council, then that's what we'll do. But we have to understand, I mean, these projects are moving forward. And
I'll make a motion to approve the assessment hearing minus the objections of the people that sent in a letter or the ones that spoke tonight. Does that suffice?
well, that'll get us, I think there's a number of these we can solve, personally. I mean, I would think the council has the ability to solve some of these. I mean, there's some of them that you're just not gonna do anything with. I mean, that's just the way it is. Well, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Repeat the motion, please.
Approve the assessment hearing minus the parcels of the people that came here or sent a letter that objected.
I need a second.
No.
There's no second. Mr. Scott, start with the first one and address it with the council on what the objection is and what staff's recommendation is.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we, no, I can't even think of the right term. Just continue the hearing, ask for clarification on general comments before we start to look at the individual comments.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Osmus.
I'll be speaking against that because I would like to just clean up the ones we can. The ones that were simple questions, I'd like to just eliminate and have it down to the ones that are clear objections that, you know, whether it's the 135 feet, 120 feet, how they did the cul-de-sac, those can get answered by staff later. But some of these we can clean up.
Councilmember Plowman.
And that was the idea of doing that seems the most expeditious to myself as well, but I did think that I heard our legal advisor advise that maybe the hearing should stay open until they could all be done at once. Is that correct?
That's not what I heard, but go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Oh, thank you. I think I was attempting to explain the process for the hearing to be held open just for the parcels from which you have objections that you're not ready to rule on one way or the other today. But I would recommend that happen first. So you'd first continue the hearing for those parcels. It could be some or all of the 17 that I've got down as having objected. Continue the hearing for those parcels until a specific future meeting. Take care of that action first, and then once you've done that, I think the path would be clear to approve the assessments for the remaining parcels.
Right, in that order that you just said?
Correct.
Okay, which is currently the motion on the table to continue the hearing at another time. That would be following your instruction if it were so to continue.
That would be correct if I understood correctly. Let me rephrase. If the maker of the motion intended that the hearing be continued just for those parcels, I would agree. But I thought the motion was to continue the entire hearing, which the council can do. I mean, if you want to just keep the hearing open for all parcels included in the assessment roll, you can do that too. But
And then we have to renotice everybody, correct? Right. Councilmember Butterfield.
Well, I'm for keeping it open for everybody till we figure out what's going on with the value and the notes on here by saying they're not in compliance with state statute 429. We have property values of $19,000, $17,000, $12,000, $10,000, $9,000 being assessed, and they were just assessed 10, 11 years ago. We have to make sure that we're right on this without anything else, because I think we're just open. There's too much here to do, and there wasn't people here that were going to be here to speak up. I think we should keep it all open till we get everything worked out right on it.
Councilmember Rosk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scott, can I ask again to clarify your comments? So what I perceive you to be saying in response to the questions by Councilmember Plowman are that we should first have a motion tonight to address the 17 properties in question, keeping the hearing open for them. Once we've dealt with that issue tonight, there should be another motion tonight to wrap up the remaining properties. Not that we're 3 weeks, 5 weeks later coming back to finish the hearing, but we'd finish the hearing tonight on the other properties? Is that what you were saying?
That is what I was saying. That's my understanding of the recommendation to the council would be to approve the assessment for the properties that have not submitted an objection.
Correct. Okay.
And to do that, I would recommend doing that after you continue the hearing for the properties that did submit an objection.
Okay. I will then thank you for that clarification, and I'll plan on voting against the motion.
Councilmember Osmus.
So I have a question then. For the people that raised the objection about the property value exceeding the value of their home, wouldn't that just then go to everybody? Or just those two people that stated that objection?
Well, if you leave the meeting open, then the council will have to decide if you're going to allow public testimony at the next meeting. If you're going to leave the meeting open, then, in my opinion, you would allow people to speak again, which you will probably have all 17 of them saying what those two said.
Or 60 more?
Well, if you leave the entire thing open, yes.
Okay.
But I mean, this council was cautioned many times on this. I mean, this should not be a surprise to anybody that those two objections came. Councilmember Nelson.
I heard enough general concerns about measurements and variety of things, but I have to say that I am upset with myself for not understanding some of the changes we made in this policy. My street was done 2 years ago, and my figures were not like this, and I am concerned about what we did and if we needed to do it in that manner. And so I was asking for a general cleanup of where we were with the rate, how we're assessing, if we're assessing both sides of a corner. How is it different this year than other years? And I asked for us to review that policy after I started to take complaints about this. Now we're entangled in the actual assessment hearing with it. And so I'm not sure, I mean, it's complicated, but I don't know that it's allowing the people who just came tonight to speak. If we have issues that apply across the street or across the projects that we did, then I think we need to be brave enough to look at them as a whole before we just grant, oh, 2 people showed up, you get credit. So that was my request. I understand that we're probably opening a complaint situation, but I do think that we should be crossing some Ts and dotting some Is that myself, and I know other council members were not aware of that, what we actually did in the policy. And if you want to blame us about that, that's fine, but that's my understanding, and that's what I heard from other people.
Okay, additional comments to the question? Please recite in as close as we can, the motion.
Motion is to continue the hearing.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'm withdrawing my second. I was under the impression that the continuance was only per the properties bearing the objections, so I did not properly understand the motion, so I'm withdrawing my second.
I'll second it.
motion been made and seconded. Additional discussion. Staff, you have that?
Yes.
Mayor, members of the council, if I could make a recommendation, I don't know how this vote will go, but if the motion could please specify a date and time that the hearing would be continued until, that might still alleviate the city from having to send new notices out to everybody, if that date and time is specified now. In the event it passes, you could.
So, and that's not paramount to the question, so do you have a date in mind of when you'd like to have that happen?
I would accept a recommendation so we wouldn't have to notice.
The next regular meeting will be Tuesday, September 6th. Monday is a holiday.
I would accept that.
Yep.
So the motion and the seconder are favorable to continuation date. Additional comments or questions either to the date or to the motion? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
No.
Osmus. Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
No.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
6 aye, 2 nay.
I think it was 3-5, I think.
No.
6 to 2.
6-2.
How did you vote?
No. Me and Oscar.
No, Andrew voted no
He
as
said,
well.
he said, yeah.
I voted aye.
Oh, you voted aye? Oh, I'm sorry. Motion carries. Next, we have a presentation of the Wilmer Auditorium Architect Review by Mcdonald and Mack Architects. Let's take a recess.
Let people know what's going to happen.
Well, why should 2 or 3 people get it? It's so much fun.
You have too many mistakes and too many questions and too many.
There's so much confusion.
Well, if we would have had committee
all
meeting,
the-
we could have discussed
we knew
it.
everything.
People would have known. I'm sorry.
We're recording.
Go ahead and call the, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting. And next is the presentation of the Wilmer Auditorium Architect Review from Mcdonald and Mack Architects.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight, I have an update on the study of the auditorium that I think we put this into motion last fall. So we had a review, a comprehensive review of the auditorium done, and we had a report made by architects on the condition of the building to talk about the improvements that would need to be made as far as the damages to the building, internal, external, subterranean, and we had an architect look at it, and he is here to present his findings and the costs associated with it, and he speaks to the intended use going forward and all sorts of things. So with me, I have Todd Grove to present his presentation on the findings of his report.
Okay. Mr. Grove, welcome.
Grover, but that's
Grover?
yes, that's
Grover?
okay. That's okay. So, I'm Todd Grover from Mcdonald Mack Architects. I'm a principal at the firm, and our firm specializes in existing and historic buildings. So, we were contracted with the city here to be able to take a look at the auditorium and look at the condition. There was a 2014 report that was done. It was called a master plan at that time. That really was looking at the auditorium, specifically looking at the HVAC system and the gun range that was in the basement. A lot of that had been put into place, but a lot of that was mainly focused on some of that, along with some future planning. So this report that I was working on looked at some more of the broader conditions of the building, but also to look at what are some of the next steps and try to talk about some of those ideas. So it's already been a long meeting, I know. So I'll kind of dive kind of on the surface level of some of the major findings that I saw, and then open it up for questions for you. So within the report, there were some, let's call it some more critical issues that I discussed looking at the building. Really, when we look at these historic buildings, we take a look at both the integrity of the building, so kind of the envelope where things are missing, but also combine that with some of the historic integrity or historic value of the building. And one of the interesting things is with the auditorium, I met with had a meeting with the person who wrote the National Register of Historic Places designation for this. His name is Rolf Anderson, and he's an expert in WPA architecture across the state, actually across the Midwest. And he wrote the report for this, and he said this is one of his favorite WPA buildings. He's looked at hundreds of buildings, hundreds of sites. And so I was really honored to be able to take a look at this building. It's just a gem, but there are some issues with the building. So one of the things that really we look at is, beginning with water infiltration. Where is water getting into the building? Starting at the roof. The roof is actually, in the 2014 report, they said the roof was limited in its lifespan. It hasn't been replaced since then. So just to continue with that, the roof is in very poor condition. It does need to get replaced. There are some water stains and water damage on the upper floors of the building. Hard to tell if those are new or if those were from before when the roofing was replaced before, but it does need to get replaced. So there's some issues with the water coming through the roof. But secondarily, once the water comes off the roof, it needs to get away from the building somehow. There's gutters and downspouts that go underground towards the storm sewer. We don't know how well those are functioning. A lot of the infiltration for water is happening in the basement and directly related to areas where these downspouts are coming down. And so one of the recommendations that I have in the report is we need to figure out, are those maybe 80, 100-year-old storm sewer pipes, are they in good condition, or are they letting water into the building? So both the gutters, downspouts, and underground really need to know a little bit more about what's happening there. But another Another area where water is getting into the building is through the masonry. So at each of the window openings, if you drive by tomorrow, go and look and notice it. Each of the windowsills and the masonry underneath the windows are essentially water's been accumulating over time and hasn't been repaired. And so water's getting into the building substructure at these locations. In addition to that, the windows that had been replaced at some time, we don't really have a record of when the windows were replaced, are also deteriorating. So it's kind of water's getting in from above, water's getting in a little bit from below, but also into the walls. So those are some of the major things that we noticed. Water was getting into the building. Once you can correct the water, that's hopefully some ways that you can stabilize the building. It's not in dire need by any means. It's a really, really hefty, substantial building. But these are some needed repairs that happen with every building in time. But the main thing, at least that's of my concern about the envelope, is some of the WPA relief panels that are on the front. We have the 3 relief panels that are a cast concrete. There's some cracking that's happening there, and I can't tell why it's cracking. One of the things we go back and look at is some of the historic drawings, and the historic drawings don't say how those were installed. We did find them. They were, and I shared them with the city. The city didn't have them before, but they're in the report, and I did share it with them. So there's maybe some investigation. Those really critical, really interesting, unique panels on the building, they're cracking. We need to know kind of some further conditions of those. And so that's one of the recommendations is if we're moving forward, we really should look at maybe what's happening there. There is a couple of structural issues, mainly in the balconies. So if you've been in the auditorium, there's balconies on either side of the auditorium that overlook the main gymnasium area. There's a couple cracks that are happening in the seats or the stands of those balconies. We don't know why. We need to kind of get underneath, and there's a little crawl space underneath there, but we weren't able to access that during this assessment. But trying to figure out, is there something structural that's happening there? Just cracking that's happening along the length of that. A couple of other things. It would have been good to assess more of the attic space that's up above. The problem is it's really hard to walk around in the attic. So some reinforced walkways, it's kind of dangerous to be up there because the walkways, if you'd step off, you're literally through the ceiling of the auditorium. And so that's a safety thing. But one benefit is that the HVAC system that was replaced after the last assessment, there was an HVAC system for the gun range, but there's also an HVAC system for the rest of the building. I talked to an engineer and they said we might be able to reuse some of that. So a new use as we're coming forward through this might be able to take advantage of that existing HVAC system within the building that has already been installed, which is a benefit. A lot of times we have to bring in something totally new, but there is something that might be existing that we can use and build off of. But when I went through those were kind of the main things. But there's a lot of good things that I don't necessarily identify in the report. The gym floor, the stage, the integrity, the historic integrity of the building, the memorial room. All of that's in great shape. So I'm just looking at what are the bad things as a part of this. And so we developed some priorities and then some kind of really ballpark estimates of moving forward. So for instance, to replace the windows, I have $230,000 there. There's about 50 plus windows on the building. It's about $4,000 a window is what we were budgeting. But the benefit is we could make the building more airtight, more watertight with these windows. I'm just pulling one off of this as an example. But the added thing is, if you go in and looking at reusing the building, This will help within that reuse of that building, and maybe even if there's a use that comes in, that will maybe even dictate some of what these next phases of repair, how that happens, both with access, ADA access, so there's no elevator right now in the building, but if it does end up being a multi-use space, putting an elevator in, depending on how that gets used. There's a lot of different options that kind of go into this, which are kind of the next steps. Now that we know that the building, we need some repairs to the building, what is that next step then to figure out what kind of use we can put in the building, and then what are some of those ways that we can make that use work within this building, just because it is just such a great building. So I'll stop there. And I'll let you, ask questions. I can dive into other things if you want me to. But one of the things that Justice and I were talking about was also talking about different uses and things like that for the building. We can talk about that, just some ideas and also some financing moving forward, just some grant money and things like that. So, but happy to answer any questions first before that.
Great, Councilmember Osmus.
I've heard about a major crack on the back east wall.
Yep.
And then tuck pointing.
Yeah, so I did forget one, and I have it here, but the east wall. The east wall is, it actually is probably more immediate. I skipped over that, my apologies. It's covered in stucco right now, and there is a crack that's back there. The problem is we don't know what's behind the stucco. Is the stucco kind of just this kind of parging that got put on the brick, or is there something that's happening more behind there? So I'm glad you brought that up, because I missed that. But that's one of the priorities that we have here, is really to immediately look at that to see how that gets repaired. And so that's one of the things we need to address as part of the masonry. For the tuck pointing, or at the mortar joints, a lot of that is focused right underneath the windows. So all of the window sills are cast stone. Cast stone isn't really cast stone. It's actually just a cast concrete product that uses different aggregate, but it's a concrete product. The window sills and then underneath there, that are the areas that need to have some masonry work done on it.
So not the whole exterior.
Not the whole exterior. It's, I mean, when we talk about doing tuck pointing on the entire building, we need to see at least 50% of the building needs to have that. That's when you get that efficiency to do the whole project. I don't see that. I think this is some focused areas where we address the mortar, but I don't think it's, looking at the front and some of the sides, the building's actually, it doesn't need a full repointing, so.
Councilmember Oz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned the cracking of the panels.
Yep.
And you said that you don't know why. Any kind of educated guess at what
Well, I have some guesses. So there are, when they put the panels up, they did, there are some joints for how these panels were put up. Where the cracking is happening is not at those joints. What my guess is, there's some sort of anchoring device that was used. My guess is when these panels got put up, there's like a grout anchor with some steel reinforcing coming out of the back of the panel. So the panel was cast on the ground, had these reinforcing anchors, and then that was put onto the building. My thought is, I think we're seeing some form of rust jacking. So water has gotten behind there, and where some of these anchors are, we see we're having some rusting, and so that's pushing and pulling where some of the anchoring points are. Again, I had hoped that the original drawings would have showed some way on how that was done, but very typical of WPA projects. The building was maybe drawn out details. Were shown, the truss work for in the attic space was shown, but a lot of the details for some of these joints and other things were left to the local craftsmen on site to figure out. So unfortunately, we don't have that. That's somewhat what the investigation, as part of my recommendation, would hopefully show. We can maybe do some radar testing, so using ground penetrating radar, which picks up where steel anchors are and things like that, trying to figure that out, maybe doing some destructive testing to try to kind of see behind there to see where maybe some of those anchors were. But my thought is we have some anchor issues, probably from rust with water getting into it.
But the panels could be preserved moving
That would be the hope, is by figuring that out, do the panels get disassembled and then re-anchored? Can they stay in place and be fixed? That's part of this next study that would have to dive in a lot deeper into and use some other different techniques in order to figure that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Comments or questions? Councilman Nelson.
Thank you. I've been an advocate for the auditorium, so my question is kind of like next steps, but did we learn enough where we're at that we could be looking for some historic preservation money to help us with this project, or what do we need to do?
I think there's kind of a couple different routes. One is the things that I was looking at here, I think need to get done to the building to stabilize it, to bring that new use and to be able for that new use to come in. There are some, the benefit is the Minnesota Historical Society has what's called the Legacy Grant Project or program, and it allows municipalities or nonprofits to, on buildings that are listed on the National Register, to be able to get grants. And they have two different levels of grants. There's the small grant, which is $10,000 and below. And so to do the small grants, a lot of times those are reports, studies, in order to get to the large grant. Well, the large grant is $10,000 and one, up to, they kind of don't have a maximum limit. We've worked on grants projects for the past probably 8 years, I think, since the program was put in place. And this past year, we did have a construction project where they awarded a grant of $275,000. So they can be big grants. And so the benefit is that municipalities, nonprofits can take advantage of this. And so I think that's really one direction you could go. The grants office also, or the Minnesota Historical Society also has municipal grants that are available. Those are some broader grant funding opportunities, but and that's a different type of grant process. But you can wrap, buildings like this or larger projects, kind of more broad-reaching projects on historic properties within your community, using those types of grants too. So I think that would get the building, repair some of these ideas so that then new uses can come in, like, whether or not it's like a business incubator that may be in, using some of the offices, still using it as a community center. When I was there's people using for basketball, pickleball, things like that, but be able to allow those uses to come in, especially now that the gun range isn't using the basement anymore. So a lot of different kind of next steps that could go into that, but stabilizing the building I think is fairly important too.
Do the uses take you to different pots of money that are available? I mean, is that something you should plan for how you want to use the building in order to apply for some of these?
I think that's, this next step is what are these uses? What can they be? And I know the city has the planning department has maybe some initial ideas, but it really is what would make this building function? What would be good supporting uses for this building? And I think there, other communities that I've seen using it, arts and cultural centers, things like that, this business incubator, offices, renting it out as offices. I think one of the benefits too is this really central, large auditorium space that not many communities have, and trying to find a use that kind of parallels with that. But you're right, depending on that use, there are different funding sources. Even going back to the Historical Society grant, they will actually pay for ADA upgrades within a building. So you want to put an elevator in, they will actually help pay for that elevator to go into a building. As long as it's done and planned accordingly, there are multiple ways that those grants can be used.
Thank you.
Yep.
Additional comments? Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You probably know there's been veterans displays there for many years.
Yep.
Also, you have the area that's really substantial to the military, looking at the veterans.
Yep.
Would the VA have any help with this at all?
Boy, I haven't done, trying to think back, I haven't done any projects that the VA has been involved with that are outside of, we've done work at the Veterans Home in Minneapolis, but outside of that, I haven't been involved, but I mean, that's a good resource. Another one that we've worked with recently, trying to remember, it's up in Madison, Minnesota. They got a grant through, I think it was the USDA. There's a grant that they used as part of their city hall to do some restoration work there. So that's, some federal grants might be available too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Additional comments or questions? Well, thank you for your report.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing that. Will we get that mailed out to us from staff, the full report? Will we see that at some point?
I emailed it to you.
Oh, I guess I should look at my email then. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just notice the thing you attached.
Okay.
Well, and if there are any other comments, please pass them along to the city and justice, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, further on that if there are more things. So.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Thank you for your work and thank you for your review. So.
Thank you.
You bet. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a nice travel back wherever you're headed.
Going back to St. Paul.
Okay. Safe travels. Next, we have consideration of an ordinance to rezone property from agriculture to high-density multifamily residential district unique properties. Mr. Walker.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, so I guess first I just kind of want to address some discrepancy on the car form tonight. So tonight is just the introduction of the ordinance. Tonight is not the adoption of the ordinance. So this is just to introduce the ordinance and then set the public hearing for September 6th. This is not to adopt the ordinance. Because I had some people call me today kind of thinking that tonight was the whole enchilada, and it's not. There's still time for discussion. And the public hearing is would be at the next council meeting if you guys decide to set it that way. So several months back, we had a meeting with the property developer, Unique Opportunities, represented by Mr. Herzog, who's with us tonight, introduced to us by the Economic Development Commission, and they are proposing a development of 3 72-unit apartment buildings that would be on Lakeland Drive at 1400 Lakeland Drive Northeast, and currently it is zoned agricultural district, and it would need to be rezoned to R5, which is our highest density multifamily unit, which is our highest density multifamily district. And since it is above the threshold of 24 units, it would need to be a conditional use permit. So the rezone is strictly just a part of the process. There are going to be several passes at this for the public to have comments, not just at this level, but also at the planning commission level. The preliminary and the final plat still need to be approved. And like I said, a conditional use permit still needs to be applied for and granted. And so those are the multiple steps in the process that will allow public input on this project, and I think the concerns of the public to be addressed. But tonight is really just to introduce the ordinance and to set a public hearing for September 6th to consider the rezone from ag to R5. So with that, I turn it back over to you, Mayor Calvin.
What are your wishes?
Make a motion to set a public hearing for September 6th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for clarifying that change in the process. So where exactly is the Planning Commission at currently with regards to the actual site plan layout or proposed development? Where are they at?
So, Mr. Herzog and his partners have been to the Planning Commission several times. I think they've heard the concept of it on multiple occasions. I think last time we went over the rezone process, and I think we talked about some concerns that some of the residents had, and addressing those, like adding a fence, doing traffic studies, opening up some of the amenities and making them joint amenities to abutting properties. This week, the Planning Commission is slated to look at this from the preliminary plat and the final plat, and I think we're going to address some concerns, I think, on Wednesday with that. But we're still in the platting process, and conditional use permit has not been applied for yet. But they did recommend rezoning the property from Ag to R5.
May I follow up? Okay, thank you. That's helpful information. And so just for the public knowledge, because I've gotten a lot of calls on this one, a lot of emails, and had a lot of conversations and whatnot with primarily people that live in that area. So I think we kind of owe it to them to at least do the process correctly and give them all the opportunity to take part. So basically what you're saying is, in terms of the proposed development itself, I mean, what we're talking about right now is specifically just setting a hearing to adopt that zoning ordinance. But the planning of the actual development itself, or the proposed development, that's still in flux.
Still in flux.
Public has the opportunity to weigh in opinion on that.
Certainly, yes. Still in flux, and I think I would say the site design is kind of has largely been agreed upon, but I think there's still like some things that can still be negotiated. Like I said, I think the introduction of a fence, kind of looking at there's going to be a vegetative wall instead of just a traditional fence, and then I said like also introducing joint access to abutting property members as well for some amenities that would be existing on the property, and so some of those things to address some of the public concerns, but. Yeah. So this is not the final approval of the project. I tried to make that clear at the Planning Commission meeting as well, that approving the rezone by no means grants the project. This is just purely a part of the process. And like I said, there are many steps at this where the public can have their input. I think one of the things that I also tried to clarify is that a lot of the input we were hearing had no bearing on deciding the use of a property. Some of those things can be addressed at a different point in the conversation, at different steps, where some of those concerns have to be considered by the Planning Commission for them to make a decision. And so zoning is not one of those, and so that's why some of the concerns that we heard at the Planning Commission, they were just told that this has no bearing on the decision tonight.
Okay, and finally, if I may, and then I'll be done. When is the next meeting? You said Wednesday?
Yep. So there'll be a meeting this Wednesday that'll be discussing the platting process, and we'll be getting to a little more of the details in the project, where some of the concerns will have to be considered by the Planning Commission to make a vote.
Okay, so residents concerned, this is just for the record, but residents that are concerned, and maybe the media can print this too, but residents concerned about the specific development itself can attend the Planning Commission's meeting this Wednesday.
Please do.
As well as future, like what would be the public hearing for the rezoning.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Oz, followed by Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. Joint amenities that you've spoken of a couple of times. Mm-hmm. Could you give us an example?
So some of the amenities that are proposed in the project are a dog park, I think also a playground, and Mr. Herzog explored the idea of getting permission from the owners of the trailer park to have joint access and build a walkway to give abutting property members access to the dog park and to the trail walkway that would be through the property.
Thank you.
And the playground.
Earlier tonight, we heard a resident express concern over kind of the traffic coming in with Lakeland, and with the entrance being on Lakeland, and suggested an alternative. Has that been considered? I know that would be coming later in the process that you explained, but is that something that's being considered?
I think conceptually it has, but the land that's being bought, it does not touch Civic Center Drive. It only touches Lakeland. So more land. So a different property owner would have to be engaged. More land would have to be purchased. It would expand the process a lot. But that has been considered conceptually. But like I said, this property only comes out to Lakeland, not Civic Center Drive.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. Where else do we have R5 zone right now?
So this is one of the things that's mentioned in the land use chapter of the comp plan. So unfortunately, R5 throughout Wilmer has kind of been pointed at the map and just kind of put places. So it's mostly on the periphery of town. There's no real rhyme or reason to it from the existing R5 districts in town.
So what constitutes, what properties do we have right now that are R5?
So the unique opportunities out on County Road 5, I guess in the CBD district where I guess that's the density of it, where Block 25 is going. Also 15th Street Flats. I'm trying to think of the map off the top of my head. And then the other density would be the Preserve on 24th, but that's in the general business district as well. So majority of them are kind of on the periphery of town, kind of on the outskirts, also kind of south of Wilmer Avenue. But yeah, so they're just kind of, instead of being concentrated in an area where the central business district is, they're just kind of on the periphery of town.
Okay. Second question on the map. What is the one that you gave us? What parcel are you talking about?
Okay, so the parcel that is circled south of the orange spotted one, is the trailer park on Lakeland Drive that comes out to Civic Center Drive, and just south of that there is I think it's an 11-acre parcel that is being considered for development that abuts Trentwood Estates, and it's on the east side of the road.
So it's all owned by the same owner?
Correct, except like the parcel that touches Civic Center Drive is not owned by the same person. So that's why you would need a new seller. It'd have to be subdivided, all sorts of other things.
Does the mobile home park really come? I'm trying to remember. I've been in there, but is there an access somehow through the mobile home park to Civic Center Drive?
There is.
There is. Yep. Okay.
They have a north entrance.
Additional comments from council? Councilor Plum.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna try not wear out my welcome here on this issue, but I know I sense that this is a building thing. So I'm gonna because it's part of the procedure. I'll vote in favor of this because it's establishing a formalized public hearing, part of that process, where the public can weigh in. The only thing is, I think the number of participating parties will probably continue to grow. So I guess I would just make a overarching statement to the developer and the members of the planning committee and whatnot. Please, leave no stone unturned when it comes to taking a look at, possibilities for alleviating some of the voiced concerns with this project, because when it actually comes time to move it forward, I think that there's going to be a crux there, because the number of people that may be objecting to it may be growing. And so if some of those things can be alleviated or, addressed in the planning stages properly, I think that gives it better legs. That gives the project better legs. So that's just my disclaimer. And but I appreciate it. And for the record, the property developer, the first property that they are still developing but already have developed, it's right at the entrance of my neighborhood. It was built very close to me and pass it every day. It has been built very well. The materials used, excellent. The property's always been well maintained, looks nice. The process has been awesome. I think law enforcement and safety would tell you that they've had virtually spent no time out there. I'm not aware of any problems, have heard nobody voice any problems or concerns. So that is for the record. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? When Mr. Herzog addressed us at the work session, his position is that he wants this project to go, but if the council doesn't want it to go, he doesn't want to keep spending money either. I think that's a direct quote. So if there's an appetite to not do this project, we really owe it to the developer to tell him that tonight and not approve the public hearing. and just vote it down because he's on a tight timeline. He told us that at the meeting. And I mean, if we don't want the project in town, we just need to let him know. I have yet been involved in public government for, at this point, I think I'm probably pushing 35 years. I have never saw a project come into a community where everybody said, oh, come here. You always have people say, we don't want it in our neighborhood. So, not in my backyard. But yet, there are needs. So I would just urge the council to consider that this is one more step in the process. But if you have the feeling that you don't want to approve it, let him know. Because it's not fair to a developer to continue investing money when at the last minute, he's going to get the rug pulled out from under him. So I hope I'm not speaking out of line here, but.
I very much appreciate that. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you said when you met with us.
Just please tell me. That's basically it. I respect all your time, and obviously you don't want to waste it. Obviously you don't want to keep spending money if it's not something that you in general support. Obviously, we want to hear everybody out and hear the perspectives, but at the end of the day, these are always hard decisions to make, whichever side you go.
So you want more?
Sure, keep going, yeah. I mean,
Okay,
it's
well, then
better
I-
to do it now than to get him down the road, 2 months and then all of a sudden say we're not gonna do it.
Well, I'm going to go the other way then. And I'm going to say this is an area of town where we need some apartment buildings, whether it's for the Midwest campus, whether it's for people working out at the senior high, whether it's anybody working out in that area. This is an area of town where we need this development. I can appreciate the concerns of the people who spoke tonight. Hopefully some of those can be addressed, but this is an ideal location for an apartment complex.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Davis.
I too, I feel how Julie does. And I feel like we have a piece of land here that eventually somebody's going to put something there. And I respect Herzog and his apartments. The ones that he has now are run very well. There's something to be proud of, and I would rather have that here than something else. So that's my thought.
Additional comments or questions? All in favor? Councilmember O'Brien.
Well, I'm on the major mayor's task force for homes. We've been looking for land to build homes because there isn't any in Wilmer right now. To me, this is a perfect area for homes and for the plan that you had talked about earlier. I think it would fit there perfectly. And I don't know why. I mean, if you have to have, I can understand, I wouldn't want a tall building sitting in my backyard either. I mean, that's just my own opinion. But that place, to me, is fit for what we're talking about in your task force. And that is to build homes and what you had talked about with not only single-family homes, but twin homes and a whole deal. And it was perfect for what you said. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, but that's what we're doing in our task force. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for property to build. Right now, Wilmer doesn't have any single-family homes.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'd like to see us move forward on it. I think I was very impressed with his presentation at our workshop when he was talking about it. This piece of land has been sitting there for a while. There is other land out there that could be developed for single-family homes too with that, but I guess I'd like to see us move forward with it. I do think that listening to some of the concerns there, but what you talked about doing, I think if everyone heard that, might feel differently about the project too. And so I think that's our challenge now, is to share that information and to listen to some of their concerns, and if there's anything we can do to help alleviate some of those. But I guess I would like to see us move forward with this recommendation tonight.
Mayor, City Council, appreciate the opportunity to be here as always. You guys have been
wonderful to work with, and I appreciate the open honesty. It makes it easier to go through this process. Ideally, hoping there's less surprises than more. And we've had a lot of hard conversations so far at the Planning Commission meeting. I know there's going to be more as we continue to have these discussions going forward. If you look through my phone, you'd see the note of every name of every person that's commented and every one of their concerns. We're going to do everything we can to address all of them. They won't all be addressed perfectly. Not everybody's going to be happy right away, but we'll do everything that we can. That's my guarantee. The point that I want to make is, as of this morning, we have 685 people on the waiting list for our apartment complexes. Those are numbers we talked about at the work session. Those numbers continue to go up. It's unlike anything I've seen anywhere else. Whether it's this property or anywhere else, I think it's in Wilmer's best interest to get any sort of, single family and, townhomes, twin homes, those are obviously incredibly important. I think Wilmer needs those too. Any sort of housing development that can be done in the community, I think, is really a necessity, because it's going to hold back some of those other business growth opportunities. And there's a lot of them knocking on Wilmer's door right now. So I would hope that our project and any of the others, if there's any way to move them forward, I would encourage you to move them forward. Thank you.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded on the floor. Additional discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nope.
That motion does carry. Next is consideration of tax increment financing plan for unique opportunities, and set the public hearing again for September 6th. Mr. Walker.
Oh, so this isn't the second part of that one. This is the TIF plan. This is the TIF plan, right? All right. Okay. Yeah. So the public hearing should be for September 19th. All right. So, like I said, the development on Lakeland Drive is going to have multiple parts, and so this is also development that is requesting TIF funding. And tonight with me, I have Tom Dinaway of Baker Tilly, who has completed the but-for process and the financial analysis that he's going to do an overview of and explain for the record tonight, and follow along with the proposed schedule of events and the timeline of the TIF plan. So, as you guys know, part of introducing the TIF there has to be the letters that go out to the county commissioners and the other tax levying districts in town. I've been copied on all of those emails, and the letters are current, and so we're currently in line with our timeline. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Mr. Tom Dinaway. There we go.
Thank you, Justice. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Tom Dinaway. I am with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. We are the city's financial advisor as it relates to the creation of tax increment financing districts. So this is the first step in what would be a statutory process that would culminate in a public hearing. So the action before you tonight would be ultimately the adoption of a resolution to call for a public hearing to be held at the second meeting in September. At that meeting, you would be reviewing the tax increment financing plan and the proposed authority for entering into future obligations to the district if you were so inclined at that point in time. Related to the creation of a tax increment district are a couple findings as it relates to the need for assistance, or what's commonly referred to as the but-for finding, as well as the adoption of the potential budget for the tax increment district. When you adopt a TIF plan and create a district, you're creating budget authority to enter into future obligations, but that action in and of itself does not obligate you to enter into those. That would come at a secondary time, or maybe potentially at the same meeting, by adoption of a development agreement. So the TIF plan creates authority. The adoption of a development agreement creates the actual obligation. So as mentioned, the proposed project is 216 total apartment units to be developed over 3 individual 72-unit buildings. The anticipated development cost is approximately $12.1 million per building, or approximately $36.3 million for the 3 total buildings. In order to project the future tax increment revenue, we had to contact the county assessor's office to get an estimate for the completed post-development market value. So the concept of TIF is the capture and redirection of the future property tax revenues that are going to be generated by the property. So the property would get built, assessed, and pay its full freight of taxes as normal property would, but then that property taxes that were paid, that were applicable to the city, the county, and the school district, and the other local taxing jurisdictions, would get captured by the county, redirected by the city, and then repaid to the developer per the terms of that development agreement. So the property itself still pays the full property tax amount. It's where does those taxes go after they've been paid? In the case of TIF, they get redirected and used to reimburse for TIF eligible expenses. So it's a revenue that comes in over time to the extent that the property is assessed an increase in market value over the base value of the property. With that being said, the property valuation that the county assessor provided was a range, and at the high end of that range was $145,000 per unit as a potential post-development market value. That's a significant increase from what we have seen from other projects that we have had them review in past years, but it was the estimate that they provided. So the tax increment revenue is going to float, and the property taxes on the property is ultimately going to float on the basis of that value. If the final actual value comes in less, the amount of tax increment revenue that would be generated by the project would be less. If the property value comes in higher than that amount, the TIF revenue would still be capped on the basis of the budget that's in the TIF plan that will be in front of you at the public hearing. So if the revenues come in lower, or if that market value is lower, the TIF amount would be lower. If the market value comes in higher, the TIF amount would still be fixed on the basis of the TIF plan. So there's no risk to the city in the event that that revenue comes in lower. But because that revenue is at a higher per unit market value assumption, it does result in a higher amount of TIF assistance than maybe what was typically seen in prior projects. That being said, it's going to come with an equally larger property tax expense. So the TIF revenue is on the basis of the property taxes that are getting paid. So if there's a higher market value applied to the property post-development, such as the $145,000 that was proposed, the property tax bill is going to be correspondingly higher. So that number is going to float together with both of those things moving together. And it's important to remember that not all of the property tax revenue being paid by the development gets captured as TIF revenue. Some goes to the county, or some goes to the school district on the market value basis, and some gets retained by the city as administrative expenses. So in order to create a district of this type, the district is eligible to be created, and the city would have the statutory authority to create the district on the basis of the creation of income restricted units. It's what's referred to as a housing TIF district. In order to create a housing TIF district, one of two tests have to be met for multifamily rental units. Either 20% of the units have to be set aside for persons with incomes equal to or less than 50% of the area median income, or 40% of the units are set aside for incomes equal to or less than 60% of the area median income. In this case, the developer is intending to meet the 20% set aside. So 20% of the units would be income restricted, and that they would have to document and track that each year in order to be eligible to receive the TIF reimbursement. So this slide shows the preliminary TIF revenues on which the TIF budget is based. You can see the market value coming online as each of the three buildings are built, and then it results in revenue being collected each year. The city was proposed to retain 5% of that, and then the final amount on the right would be the reimbursement of the property tax amount reimbursed to the developer on the basis of the revenue that was generated or captured as TIF. And we can get more into that within the TIF plan at the public hearing. So in order to create a tax increment district, you have to make the but-for finding. And the but-for finding is the finding that the proposed project would not occur but for the projected or requested use of the tax increment assistance. So we go about answering this on the basis of a financial review. So we can look at the rate of return realized by a developer on a real estate investment and evaluate if that investment would likely be feasible or likely to occur absent the requested assistance. If that project does not generate a feasible return worthy of that real estate investment, then we can make that finding that that project would be unlikely to occur because it would not be considered financially feasible. We can then compare the project and the rate of return with the requested assistance to see if the amount of assistance being provided to the project is reasonable. So for this project, we've looked at a 10-year operating pro forma for each of the buildings, and which resulted in a 13 or 14-year overall project pro forma period that we reviewed. So we looked at the developer's anticipated costs for the development of the project and their anticipated operating revenues from the leasing of the units within the project. And we use all that information to calculate what is known as a return on investment, and in this case is an unleveraged internal rate of return. It's a fancy tool for calculating return on investment. So with the project on an unleveraged IRR without assistance resulted in a return on investment of 5.28%. With assistance, it resulted in a return on investment of 7.19%. So what we can do is use those numbers to compare to industry benchmarks for what is a feasible project. So one of the industry benchmarks we use is the PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is the PwC there, Real Estate Investor Survey, and that identifies a target for the investment in either existing or new real estate developments on a national level of 6.83%. That is a very conservative benchmark, but we want to set that number low. If we set that as a low benchmark and the project is incapable of meeting that low benchmark, it provides further credence to that but-for finding. So as you can see, without assistance, the rate of return was 5.28. That falls fairly significantly below a benchmark of 6.83, even though that benchmark is a very conservative benchmark. So what that tells us is the project without assistance would be unlikely to occur, but for the requested TIF assistance. And that would give you then the statutory authority to create the TIF district in the future if you so choose. And that also provides context as it relates to the rate of return with assistance, which is only just very slightly above what is, again, a very conservative benchmark. And that tells us that we're not over incentivizing the project on the basis of that level of TIF assistance because it falls just right within that range. So again, that information provides you the but-for finding necessary for the creation of a TIF district and also provides you an understanding of the reasonableness of the TIF request with assistance. So finally, this is a project that would be done on a pay-as-you-go basis. So the developer would be incurring all the risk, they would be funding all the project costs up front, and they would be reimbursed over time from the TIF revenue as it's generated. TIF is a future source of revenue, so we have to bridge that time gap in between incurring costs now and revenues that's going to be produced over a potential 17-year period. So the developer is going to be taking on all that risk. If future market values come in less than projected, they will receive lower amounts of TIF revenue. If the property tax system changes and property taxes go down, they will realize a lower amount of tax increment revenue. The city has no obligation to make up any shortfall in TIF revenue from what is originally projected on a pay-as-you-go basis. All that risk falls on the developer's shoulders. So the total projected reimbursement budget authority for the project over the full 17 years of the district, if it gets built out exactly as proposed, and on a cumulative basis without any consideration for interest or the time value of money, would be $8.7 million. But again, the developer would be responsible for funding that full amount up front, and then they would be reimbursed over the potential 17-year period of the district. The city would be retaining 5% of the increment for administrative expenses. If you were to factor in the time value of money and the fact that that is going to be revenue received over a significant period of time, the present value of that assistance, again, that would only be realized if all three phases of the development were built out as projected and on the timeline that they're projected, the present value of that assistance would be approximately $5 million, factoring in the time value of money. So this is the proposed TIF budget that will be included within the TIF plan that's before you. You can see the reimbursement of TIF eligible costs of 8.7, the city's admin retainage of $481,000, resulting in a total project cost budget authority within the TIF plan of $9.2 million. Again, the TIF plan provides the authority. If you wanted to provide that reimbursement, that would be obligated via the entering into the development agreement. So the TIF plan and budget is based on a shortened 17-year duration of the TIF district. Housing districts are able to be in place for a total of 26 years. The city's policy is typically 15 years, but in the case of the Herzog developments, you have staggered the start of the district to incorporate 15 years of full development, since these buildings are going to be coming online over a couple-year period of time. So similar to the other project that had a 17-year duration to allow for a 3-year build-out in the initial buildings. So if you so choose, the next step would be to approve the resolution calling for the public hearing to be held at the September 19th City Council meeting. With that, I'll turn it over for questions.
What are your wishes?
Make a motion to set the public hearing for September 19th, 2022.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Roll, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
That motion does carry. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Next, we have consideration of an ordinance for sale of property to Wilmer Poultry. Mr. Walker.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So, so tonight is really just the introduction of the ordinance to introduce the land sale to Wilmer Poultry for the agreed upon price of $50,000. This is not the decision for tonight. This is just this is introducing the ordinance to review the purchase agreement. And so the purchase agreement goes in front of the Planning Commission on Wednesday and is set to be approved and set to be considered for approval at the September 7th Planning Commission meeting. So, so turn it back over to you for any other questions.
Council, what are your wishes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to set a public hearing for September 6th for sale of property to Wilmer Poultry. Discussion.
Just the timeline you said? The planning commission wouldn't approve it until after we did? Is that what you're saying?
Yep. So the purchase agreement can be approved concurrently. So we're running it concurrently, and so it needs approval of both bodies to be legitimate. And so it just happens that this month, your meetings, it was introduced at your meeting first, and then before being introduced to their meeting.
No, I guess just the question for me is, with that is I look at what the planning commission says about the information before we do. So in this case, we won't be able to do that.
You should be able to do that since the public hearing is after their meeting on Wednesday. So it will be introduced on a preliminary basis on Wednesday, and so there will be comments available for your review for your decision come September 6th.
I think what she's saying is that traditionally the council tries to act after the planning commission. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Additional comments or questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. I don't know if you got more on the agenda or not, but probably do. Next, we have consideration of introduction of an ordinance licensing and regulating THC products. Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the city council. What we're asking tonight is the introduction of a
Mr. Box, could I have you halt in your presentation? And, because I know you have to be here.
Yes.
Could we go to the ARPA fund request for state child care economic development?
Absolutely.
So that some of our other
We'll save the fun
partners
stuff
could,
for last, right?
could not have to listen, because this, I have a feeling, might get rather lengthy. So if council's okay with that, I'm going to take the mayor's prerogative to change the agenda to talk about the consideration of request for ARPA funds as state child care economic development grant match dollars. Ms. Valiant, who do I go here? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. You certainly didn't have to change the agenda, but thank you. It's been a long day for everyone, I think. Not sure if I should say good evening or good night.
Right.
So Michelle Moratsky with the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission, serving the counties of Candy, Ojai, Meeker, McLeod, and Renville. And Sarah here with the EDC. We will just be talking about childcare and a request that we have for the council to consider. We'll try to make it quick. I can speak fast, but feel free to stop and ask questions or clarifications as we go through. We wanted to just give you kind of a background of where childcare in Candy, Ojai County has been and where we're at right now and where we hope to go in the future. So There we go. Back in 2018, Candy, Ohio County was the recipient of a First Children's Finance Rural Child Care Innovation Program grant. What that grant did was provided technical assistance through First Children's Finance. They are experts in childcare and do a fantastic job with pulling data, walking people through the RCCIP process, and working on strategic action for the future to solve childcare needs. Childcare is still an issue. It's been an issue for, my son will be 30, and I would say it was an issue when he was a child. So we've been fighting this for a very long time, and we have some opportunities to find ways to hopefully provide some solutions and get some stability within the city of Wilmer and Candy, Ohio County, and all of the cities. So the key findings for the 2018 analysis showed that there was a shortage of 776 slots in the Candy, Ohio County area. The number of providers in service for less than 5 years and more than 20 years are higher than the state average. And those are the two, when you look at childcare as an industry, those are the 2 years that are the most vulnerable for providers to leave that profession. 50% of survey respondents back in 2018 indicated that lack of childcare was having an impact on their family planning. And the action plan that was created from the program from the RCCIP is actually available online. So if anyone is interested in seeing that, if you just type in Candy, Ohio County RCCIP, you should be led right to it. All right, another point that we have here, I'm going to go back real quick. Just want to mention this RCCIP, of course, was from 2018 to 2019. And one of the most visible things that came out of it was the expansion of the Y childcare over in Spicer. And so then we had the pandemic that took about 2 years of our lives. Things halted, not a lot was done. Back in April, I talked with Sarah and we reconvened. So we went through everyone that was involved and, figured out who needed to be where with changes in staff and things like that. We had about 32 people were invited. You can see on one of the sheets that Sarah handed out. In that one is just a summary. So we reconvened that group in April of this year, and we went through an entire kind of SWOT analysis on the backside just to see where everyone stood now, 2 to 4 years after the initial RCCIP started, basically in the same place that we were. So I just want to bring up this, on the screen is area market rates. So these are the market rates, child care center versus family care. What you'll notice is, for example, if you look at the infant care for a child care center versus family care, it's actually about 63.6% higher on a weekly rate. So I'm definitely not saying that centers are bad, because they're not. Centers are great. Family care is great. We need both options for all of our residents in the county and our cities. It's just a point of clarification. You can see that. One of the things I hear a lot is we need to raise CCAP, Child Care Assistance Program rates. That does not provide everything our providers need to have a successful business. So we can keep raising those rates, great, but that's not going to solve our problems. So then just going to the next slide, just a point of information that there are work issues occurred due to childcare arrangements. And I believe this, Sarah, was this from 2018? Yeah, so it is a little bit older data when the RCCIP was first put together. I did receive a message from our First Children's Finance representative, and they are actually working on updating state information as we speak. She just didn't have anything to share right now. But you'll see work issues, 37% had no issues. Great. However, there's tardiness, there's the inability to work overtime. How many of you have had someone say, I need to get to daycare by 5 because if I'm not there by 5:05, I get charged extra? And really, our childcare providers, they have lives too. This is a job for them, and they do a wonderful job. So we all have to respect that. 45% absent from work, couldn't make it because your child care provider, either you didn't have child care or your backup wasn't available or whatever arrangement you have for child care didn't work, so you couldn't be at work. Inability to work different shifts. You know, Wilmer is a community of manufacturing, and we have a lot of different shifts. Not everyone works 8 to 5 every day. So we want to recognize that is a barrier as well. This slide is showing, and you have a copy of it. So this is data as of June of 2021. And again, First Children's Finance is working now to update this data. The thing I'm going to point out about this, so you'll see in June of 2021, there were nearly 4,000 slots needed in Southwest Minnesota. That is 18 counties, First Children's Finance's kind of regions. And Candy-Ojai County alone had 651 slots needed. That is 16% of that 4,000. So we are a significant portion of that overall need. I will mention that we have some great manufacturing and businesses that are opening up. We have a FedEx distribution center that needs employees. The Brunswick boat manufacturing, they're going to need employees. This number, the 651, is not going to go down. We were at, I believe it was 776 back in 2018. You know, 3 years later, we're at 651, but we had a pandemic in there. We did get the Y childcare going. That helped, but I think we're going to be right back in the same spot, if not deeper. So where does that bring us? What are we talking about? Why are we here? Get to the point. Child Care Economic Development Grant. So Minnesota's DEED office, Department of Employment and Economic Development, has a grant available right now. The focus of it is to be used for solutions to reduce the child care shortage. The applicant must be a public or nonprofit organization. We can request up to $300,000, and there has to be a 50% match. And the deadline is August 30th. So they opened it up July 19th. At that time, Sarah and I were about this deep into broadband. So as soon as that application, we started working on this, but then as soon as that application was submitted, we rolled right into childcare. And with the 50% match, we are working with, Sarah's going to be working with all of the cities in the county. So we're not just coming to Wilmer and asking for that. We are also coming to the county. We'll be back here in less than 12 hours, talking with the county again tomorrow morning. So we appreciate everyone's time and attention. I just want to share a slide that shows the local activities. We had a meeting, so of those 30 plus people that had, we reached out to reconvene the RCCIP, we went back and said, who would like to be on this team to talk about this grant? And we have about half a dozen people that are working on it. They are very well versed in the area of childcare and what those needs are in Candy-Ojai County. So we came up with this list of ideas. It is very aggressive. Forgivable loan funds, and I believe there might be some dollar figures in some of your materials. Everything here is just preliminary. We had to throw things onto paper, take a look, and kind of assign values. So these are all ideas right now. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be smoothing it all out. But everything is very doable. So forgivable loan funds for family providers and centers, whether that means like perhaps a family provider needs an egress window. And we'll have a group that works on the details of that. There's a mentorship program, again, mostly for family providers, pairing a new family provider with an experienced family provider, and maybe there's some compensation to give that experienced provider for their time. An employee assistance type program. So many of us work in organizations where there is an EAP. Child care providers don't necessarily have access to health insurance unless they have a partner or spouse that has it, or they're able to go on any of the state programs. If we would be able to fund an EAP type program, we could potentially save a lot of providers from leaving childcare. There's a lot of burnout that goes on with that. Some other things like license fee reimbursement, 1 year reimbursement of business insurance. For the license fees, family providers, if you're not aware, are licensed through the county. And the first year is $50, and their renewal fees thereafter are $100. And we have about 85 family providers within Candy, Ohio County. So from a dollar standpoint, it's a small thing, but it's a small thing that could have a really big impact to them. 1 year reimbursement of business insurance. Transportation tokens. So at the MMDC office, Terry Smith is our transportation coordinator, and you know, a lot of providers, centers and family providers, they want to take their kids, the kids that they watch, they want to take them to the park or to the pool or something fun, maybe a museum. And they don't have a vehicle that can fit 10 to 12 children in it. So if we can help with some transportation tokens, that just gives the children a better experience as well. Training opportunities, I'm going to call out specifically training opportunities for kids with special needs. That is an opportunity we have. That is a very unique opportunity that we could work with. Also, assistance with curriculum development, business and finance education. Family providers are not babysitters anymore. They are providers. They need curriculum. They need to run it like a business. So, and then a foster care program and document and translation services. So that is the whole list. Whether, you know, I expect our application will include all of this, and we have set out goals and things like that in here. So it's very aggressive, but a lot of these things are very doable. So how do we stand out? We have strong community support. If we have more than a 50% match. So the grant is for $300,000. 50% of that is $150,000. But if we can show that we have this strong community support and we have more than that 50% match, that makes us a stronger application. It makes us more competitive, and we do expect this to be very competitive. So our emphasis is on new slots with a lot of activities to support retention. We also would have additional support for diverse providers, and there would be involvement from businesses to address slots for non-traditional hours, again, having that shift work availability. And our goals to provide foundational support for new providers and support existing providers with new tools, taking steps toward making childcare a viable business and job opportunity. That is a very difficult thing to justify in the business world. Support workforce development. And all of these goals, these 4 goals listed, actually meet several of the original RCCIP's SMART goals, and those were echoed in the April meeting this year. So here's my last slide. We would like to ask the Wilmer City Council to authorize $100,000 from the ARPA fund as a match for the proposed Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development's Child Care Economic Development Grant. The Candy, Ohio County and City of Wilmer Economic Development Commission, Aaron and Sarah, will actually be the applicant and will manage the fund and everything that entails there. Mid-Minnesota Development Commission is certainly coming in with some in-kind contribution as far as staff time and assistance to do that.
Wow, what a thorough report. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Council?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Osk, followed by Nelson.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for, I think, again, this is certainly a crisis that I think our community is facing, as you explained, that 651 is growing as we grow economically, and we were talking about housing earlier, and this, I think, is an equal priority for us. I have a couple things. So first of all, I was really excited to hear about the EAP. I think that's important, and I like that because I think it offers benefits to both in-home care and center care. A little concerned that the rest of that list may be a little focused on in-home care. I'm wondering how it applies to centers, but I think the EAP is really exciting. And ultimately, like, we need to do a lot in this area, so improving the in-home care would be great. I guess my biggest question is $100,000 the right number? As you were saying, it's going to be highly competitive. The more match that it can exceed that 50%, the better. Should we be looking at spending more ARPA funds than 100,000?
We would not turn it away.
I think I'll speak to that just a little bit too. So Kaneohe County tomorrow morning will be asking them for $150,000 of their ARPA funds as well. And we've got a plan to ask every other city in Kaneohe County for additional dollars as well. So we plan to well exceed that 50% by quite a bit, with the anticipation that this grant is probably one of the most competitive that's available in the state right now. And we don't anticipate, we're going to ask for $300,000 from the state, but I don't anticipate us receiving that full bucket, right? So of all of that long list of things that we would love to do with these dollars, the more local match we have, the further it goes. And what we had a lot of discussion about internally with coming to the council tonight to ask for the $100,000 that had been earmarked, if you will, in previous ARPA discussions. We think the more that we can put into the pool and put towards this one program, the less we have to spend creating additional programs in the future, right? We know this isn't going to solve the problem. Childcare is still going to be an issue that we have to continue to address. But the more that we can concentrate our effort on this singular program and really make some impact with this effort right now, the better.
Thank you. And a follow-up for our administrator. The last time we talked about ARPA funds, when we were earmarking, was there a balance that was left over?
Yes.
And what was that number?
I'd say, because we've only allocated the first $1 million, so we still haven't finished allocating the other $1 million.
Okay.
I might add one more thing to that thought too. I don't think that there would be anything to say that, we get through this, we see where the budget lands with these different activities that we want to do. Adding more to that forgivable loan program, if it was just an extension or a second round of something like that, funding additional training, right? If there are additional needs identified after we got through this process, I would expect it to take a couple months probably to hear from the state on their award. But we could certainly readdress, are there additional funds that we are seeing needed?
I think that would be great if you could come back to us, hopefully after you've gotten the full $300,000 in the grant, right? And every city is going to match what Wilmer's throwing in. The county will double the request that you bring them tomorrow morning. Come back to us. And I think once you've set up some of the programs, it's got to be a priority for us.
Councilmember Nelson, followed by Butterfield.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Osk already addressed. I was trying to remember the amount that I know we had talked about wanting to do that, but I really appreciated what you said, and maybe it's a better opportunity to come back the second time. If this is giving you a strong enough application to see if you can get this, then maybe we can fine tune something else that we need that falls outside of the grant or something that pops up through the grant. So.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Well, my question basically got to answer. I was going to wonder how much the county was looking at going in. I was hoping that Wilmer wouldn't have to pay the county share again.
Additional comments? Don't print that. Are we ready to vote? Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Begley.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay.
That passes. Thank you for the work you guys are doing. I know you guys are doing really heavy lifting over there, and really appreciate what you're doing and bringing projects for us that are really going to make our community stronger, better, and a better place to live, work, and play. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Good presentation.
Next, we have consideration of an ordinance licensing and regulating THC. Mr. Box, I'm back to you. I think you've been there before.
Deja vu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight is an introduction of an ordinance regulating and licensing THC within the city of Wilmer. At the July 18th meeting, the council enacted an emergency ordinance to allow us some time to fully develop and draft and bring to you a licensing ordinance for that we have tonight. So with that, I'll stay brief in my comments. This is a new ordinance for many cities, for all cities throughout the state of Minnesota. So this is our first and well thought out attempt at it. Lots of recognition goes to the city attorney for putting this draft together, cleaning everything up. So I'm happy to answer any questions and defer to Mr. Scott as well for any questions.
Okay, I think one thing that I think that we're missing here is in the fee section, you have that we will address that through the process when we adopt their fee schedule. And I know that for alcohol, we have a $4,000 fee, if I remember correctly. And then the county collects a fee for cigarette licensing, cigarette sales. I believe there's opportunity within the legislation. Either it's void in the discussion, or it allows us to charge a fee for these services. And I think the council should seriously consider it to be a $2,000 fee. This is a mind-altering product. It is, we're going to have a lot of ramifications. We don't know what those are yet. If we come back and find out that that fee is too high, we could certainly lower it. But there's nothing in the fee schedule. And I don't know if we want to open up that ordinance, or I just want the council to talk about that. There is not a fee that is being proposed at this time, but, I've had some suggestions that people have talked to me about and say that it should be equal to alcohol, so it should be at the full 4,000. I don't think it should be at the full 4,000, but I think it should be a fee that is a sizable fee. Our goal is to not prohibit its sale, but yet to regulate the sale so that it is done in a manner that the city is able to control. So that's the only thing I'd like to add before I entertain a motion, if someone is willing to entertain a motion to accept. Okay, we got three things we got to do here. To set the public hearing for September 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification on what the mayor said about the fee. I know that there is not a lot of direction through the state law, so is there a reason that you didn't put one in here, or is there a concern about putting one in here, or could we propose what he?
I'll take a stab at it. Sure. There is a fee imposed. It's not set. The amount of the fee is not determined. But in this ordinance, it says that no license shall be issued until the appropriate license fee is paid. And then it allows the council to set the amount of that fee by resolution, which it would do in its fee schedule, which it can update as frequently as it wishes to do. And I don't know that we've talked about this specifically, but it may be that the fee schedule would be coming back to the council in conjunction with the public hearing on the 6th.
Correct.
So it could be a two-step. We could approve this and come back with the recommended fee as suggested.
That was the intent, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my comments were simply to, I think if we get it out there that,
That we're doing it, yeah.
that we're going to have a fee, and that we kind of get the flavor out there on what that amount is going to be. We don't want it $5 like a parking violation, But I'm somewhat arbitrarily saying the $2,000. I mean, maybe it should be higher. But I just wanted to throw something out there for the council to consider, that I really feel strongly it needs to be a sizable fee for conducting this sort of business. Councilmember Butterfield.
My question is, Attorney, is there anything in here what Dave Baker brought up about having these products tested at labs to make sure they're not over the state thresholds?
To answer your question directly, no, there's nothing in this ordinance that talks about testing substances in the lab. The threshold is set in statute, so the only products that may be sold legally with THC in them are products that have less than 0.3% of THC. How do cities determine that? I don't know if there's the capability right now for a city to involve a lab or start sampling products and testing it. We know what the law says, what is legal and what isn't. This ordinance is consistent with state law, so that it is not legal to sell products that are above that concentration. If there were evidence that came to light that someone was selling a product that was above that concentration, that would still be illegal. That would be a violation of any license that had been issued under this section. But as far as how would the city actually test a product to determine that, this ordinance does not address that.
Is there any way that we could get it added on to help the state out to move it further for them? I'm not a big person in favor for this at all. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm on Dave Baker's side. I'd rather not even seen this come through.
I understand your question, and obviously the state is the party that made, or the entity that made these products legal now, and the city's trying to now rein that in a little bit, or at least establish some protocols for how they can be sold, by requiring them to be sold in a way that would minimize or eliminate the chances they could be sold to minors. But as far as the city having the resources to begin sampling products and determining the concentration of THC in the products through some lab process, and this is something I talked about briefly with the prosecuting attorney as well when the emergency ordinance was enacted, I don't know that those resources exist, honestly, right now.
And if I could add, council member, by doing nothing, and I think would be putting us in a worse situation, not allowing us to continue and regulate and license this product. With our emergency ordinance, that does expire after 61 days. So the council would either need to act and extend that emergency ordinance or adopt this or a like ordinance, if further regulation was needed.
I was at City Hall today in the D&D or whatever it is, smoke shop. I saw their vehicles sitting in front of the City Hall. So I'm assuming we have people that have applied.
There are
three up to this point?
There are three vendors that have filled out the temporary permit that was sent out after the emergency ordinance was approved.
Okay. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have any idea how they're gonna market or sell them, like in a bag of 10 or a jar, bottle of 25, 50, or?
Yep, so that wouldn't be determined by the city. We could regulate and enforce that. However, that is all laid out in state statute. If memory serves me correct, it is a maximum of 50 per container, I believe.
And what kind of price?
I can't answer
Any
that.
idea?
I can't answer that, no.
Like $24.99 or no?
I truly cannot, I have no idea.
Charge whatever,
Buy
I mean,
some.
they can charge whatever they want.
yeah, there's no price. We would not be enforcing a price. That would
Additional
not.
comments or questions? Councilmember Nelson.
From what I've heard about, this is going to be a work in progress, and so I think we're taking steps in the right direction, and I think we'll be talking about it again, depending on when the state looks at it again, but I think I'm supportive of doing the proposed.
Councilmember Rosk.
When it comes time to set the fee, would it be possible for staff to provide us examples of what other cities who have acted before us have done throughout the state?
We can look. We may be one of the first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the research I've done, we'd be one of the first, and that's why I would like it high. Because I think if the first people coming out of the gate set it real low, I think that's then what everybody's gonna do, right? So we'd be one of the first ones coming out of the gate, setting it at, you know, I mean, I had people talking to me, telling me they wanted it at $4,000. But I think that's too prohibitive. I mean, because we don't really have any data here to support anything. But if we have three companies currently talking about wanting to sell it at $2,000 a piece, that's $6,000, then we start recouping some of the costs that we have expended. And I think we can easily justify that expense. And that's why I think we need to set it high.
And you mentioned that currently the fees for liquor are $4,000, right?
Correct.
And you mentioned cigarettes, but that was the county.
It's a county fee, it's not a city fee. Do we know what the county charges? Does anybody know?
Not off the top of my head, just from my previous work, I would say an average cigarette sale license would be about between $150 and $300 a year.
The $2,000 is significantly more than that.
Yes, it is, but this is a much different product as well.
Councilor Plowman.
If I may, I think it's the dollar amount for those things are usually commensurate with the revenue generated. So that should be something that if we start looking into fees charged for alcohol sales, tobacco sales, whatnot, and what those averages are across communities, there should be some correlation. And we could use those, like that percentage, to maybe sort of average out, some percentage of expected annual revenue. I mean, I understand that you want to be high, but if tobacco is a couple $100, and the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars worth of tobacco products they probably sell, I don't foresee them selling that dollar's worth of this product.
Well, my goal would be they wouldn't sell it in Wilmer.
Well, I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Davis, followed by Nelson. And we got a whole bunch, yeah.
So
Okay, let's keep going.
Looking at the fees for the violations, I feel like it should be higher for selling to minors.
That certainly can be adjusted. I may need to be reminded if this was in line with our current administration fees. Does that sound right? Or penalties? I could be. Or this may have been taken from the one of the drafts that we reviewed as well.
That's my recollection, is this was probably in one of the working drafts we had initially, and it seemed reasonable, and I didn't recommend any changes. But certainly that's a council policy decision.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Rasmus, followed by Nelson.
I guess I'm not seeing the difference between alcohol and this product. As far as I think, if somebody's smoking a cigarette going down the street, that's totally different than somebody that's buying these products and somebody who's buying alcohol. $2,000 to me is reasonable, if not higher.
Councilmember Nelson.
I was just going to suggest that we go ahead with this ordinance and ask staff to come back with some information on the fees, if there is anything else out there. And if we're the first one, then we would need to know that, I think, also, and to look at the justification for that. So.
Mm-hmm. If comments or questions, Councilmember Rasmus.
Oh, not yet.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the people that have applied already,
Yes, under the temporary ordinance, or under the emergency ordinance.
they haven't paid any fees.
There was no fees set with that.
So when would they pay, once we come up with a?
Yes, so in the memo, they would have to reapply with a new application and meet all the requirements in this ordinance, including the fees to be paid.
Is that a 1 year
It would be an annual fee.
License, or does it start January 1st?
Yes, calendar year license.
So it'd be a half year or less than
Yeah, we could, if the council wanted to prorate it, you could do that.
Okay. I would think, like $2,500. So good number to start at.
Additional comments or questions? I mean, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. I just feel like this being new and so many questions around it, it's going to take a lot of staff time. I think law enforcement is going to get called in on a number of these issues. I just feel it needs to be higher. This is going to take more time and energy than $3,000 or $4,000.
Can we have a comment from Captain?
You want me to go to him first, or you, Councilmember O'Brien?
What difference to me?
Mr. Anderson?
Sorry. That's right. I can clear up a couple questions that there were first. The statute says that's got to be packaged, no more than 50 milligrams, and each piece can't be more than 5. Part of the problem we have with the state is that, first of all, law enforcement officers don't have any way to test these items. There probably will be something coming, but we have no way to test it. So if it comes in a rock candy or a gummy bear that's similarly packaged to other stuff, we may not know it. It says it's supposed to be packaged in the original material, but we don't know that that's going to happen. The other problem is I don't believe the state BCA lab can extrapolate anything out of edibles right now. They can do it out of plant material, but I don't believe they can do it out of edibles. So, and I'm sure they're scrambling now to figure out how they're going to test these items, but I don't believe there's a way for them to extrapolate 0.3% out of an edible.
Can I ask him a question? Alcohol, you guys send people undercover to make sure that they're following the 21, right?
Compliance checks, correct.
Yeah. Will you be doing compliance checks on these?
That would be the intent with this too, yes, is doing compliance checks, the same that the county does compliance checks with the cigarettes, and we do compliance checks with alcohol. We would do the same with this.
You're talking BCA lab. We're looking at BCA lab. It takes over a year to get ballistics back. How long would it take to get that back?
Yeah, and it kind of ebbs and flows with the labs depending on what they have. I mean, for a while, they weren't even taking trace amounts of hard drugs like methamphetamine and powders. You had to have a weighable amount. That's changed. You need special requests from prosecutors to get regular marijuana tested because they were overwhelmed. You still need that. So I don't know what they're going to do with the edibles. This was really caught a lot of people by surprise, law enforcement included. I think probably almost every legislature who signed off on it was probably caught by surprise too. So there's a lot of unknowns, and I think there will be costs and time associated with on our end. And I don't know what they're going to charge either, Mr. Fairley.
So I'm hearing there's a bit of consensus around a fee of $2,000 to $2,500. I'm also hearing that it should probably even be higher than that. But I think we need to be starting to set some, so when these people are coming in saying, hey, I want to do it, they need to know there's going to be a cost associated with it. On this deal, I'm not afraid to be at the front of the pack, particularly if our numbers are going to be high. If we were going to say we're going to charge $125 or $250, wait for everybody else. But if we can set the course and say, if you're going to do it in Wilmer, you're going to pay for it. And then, I mean, we heard both of our legislators tonight tell us if there's anything you can do to slow the process down, slow the process down. That's how you slow the process down. That's the pocketbook. So, Councilmember O'Brien, followed by Butterfield.
And Osk.
I've already asked my
And
question.
Osk.
I'm done.
Councilmember Butterfield, followed by Osk.
Well, this is before my time. I know Kansas County was one of the driest counties. We were probably one of the last ones to approve alcohol. I think that maybe we should be one of the first cities to put the hammer down and not try to get too much of this in here.
Councilmember Osk.
I'm curious, there are other states that have done this a long time ago. Law enforcement in these states have adapted, I'm assuming? Like, what are they doing in Vegas?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing in Vegas, but yes, there are other states like Colorado adopted some of this. And yeah, law enforcement definitely had to change what they do, but our state was just not prepared for it. I don't know if maybe they went about it differently, and it was more transparent when they did it, but this one kind of certainly caught us by surprise. I think I got a notice from the Min Chiefs on it maybe a day before it passed, and they hadn't heard anything either, and they've got lobbyists, so.
I'm thinking about, you mentioned before that the city currently doesn't have a way to test any of these products to determine what percentage is contained. That technology must exist. Other states must be doing that?
I don't know if they do or not. So we have tests that are called NIC tests or field tests where you put the material in, some chemicals get mixed, and it lets you know. And it's basically just for charging purposes. It's not for convictions in court. But I am unaware of anything that's out there to test edibles. Like I said, I'm sure there'll be something coming, or maybe reps will reach out to us, but I'm not aware of anything. We don't have anything right now.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just say, like, I think in general for the conversation that we've been having, 2,000 sounds pretty prohibitive to me. But I do agree with Councilwoman Davis that when people violate the restrictions that we have set, I think there need to be stiffer penalties than what we're currently looking at. I'm going to trust that people are going to exercise their personal freedom to use these products correctly and legally. When they don't, that's where I think the stiffer penalty should come.
So do you have we're setting this, and we're going to publish it, and the next motion is to publish by summary, of course, but we need to kind of give some direction to our staff so that they can prepare what we want them to publish. So are you wanting that increased, the penalty amount?
Yes.
Okay. To what amount?
It's your idea first.
Well, I'm more looking at the suspension of the license. So like for the third violation, their license is suspended for 10 days. That's like a slap for a third violation. I feel like, third violation, you're done.
Step them all up one.
I agree.
Yeah, step them up one. If they have a third violation for that, they shouldn't be selling it.
I agree, and they should be suspended on the second. I agree with the idea to step everything up one, and I think all of the dollar amounts need to go up considerably.
Yeah.
Give me numbers.
250, 500, and 1,000.
250, 500, and 1,000. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would concur. I think that I think the licensing fee should not be cost prohibitive, because I just believe in free market enterprise, and our state legislators made this a legal product to sell. So with that being the case, if our state legislators want to go back and change that, they're free to do so. At the same time, we want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence. And, Mr. Mayor, respectfully, if you said that you don't want the cost to be prohibitive, but then after that you said the thought would be that you'd rather they not sell it, well, then that's a double entendre there. So I think having the initial licensing fee lower, but a much higher, stiffer penalty phase, so to speak, would sort of accomplish the same thing, in that there's enough teeth in even a single violation for misuse or abuse of that license that, it would hurt enough that it would possibly prohibit them from selling it, but it would be the merchant doing it unto themselves, as opposed to the city imposing it on them up front before the abuse of that power, so to speak, to use. So I would concur that I would look at all the steps, and I would think that I like the graduation of each step, but I would say all of them should be bumped up. So with the same license, for example, the first violation, being a fine of $1,000 and a suspension of not less than 3 consecutive days. Second violation being 2,000 and license suspension of not less than 10 days. Third violation, their license is revoked. That would be my.
I'd also like to see a fine with the revocation though as well.
1,000?
Yeah, I think that would work. That'd be good. Throw it on there. Stick it to them.
5,000 for the revocation. Councilmember Osmus.
Oh, I'm just waiting. I'm good with the violations. I'm back to the licensing fee, and I would like to make it 3,000. To me, it's just a step down from alcohol.
Well, but Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think I don't think the fee is symbolic of the product that they're selling. I think it's commensurate to the dollars worth of what they sell. So again, if we're saying we don't want it to be cost prohibitive, I don't know that in any of these places, since it's so new, I mean, you got to sell a lot of pot gummy bears to make $3,000. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Do you?
Well, I don't, but I don't know that.
Well, they could be working on a 40% margin.
Right, but
I think there's a lot of profit to be
You
made.
said 4, you said 2, make it 3, let's go.
Mr. Box.
No, I don't know if I want to say anything. I'll just.
Well, I mean, we're making sausage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
I would just maybe, just to interject, not interject, but add to the conversation on license fees, maybe staff would maybe take the approach of covering the cost of administration and enforcement. That's really what a license fee should do in this situation. What that dollar amount is, I don't know, but maybe we could put some numbers together, what we think maybe law enforcement would look like throughout a license period and what staff time would look like throughout a license period, and come back with maybe a recommendation within that guideline or within these numbers that you've given us.
Make a motion to do that.
What's your motion?
What he just said.
What he just said.
Back to us.
Mr. Scott.
If I could just chime in quickly, the direction on the penalties is greatly appreciated. That's a change we should make before the ordinance is published. The license fee is a question you can address at the next meeting because that is not specified in this ordinance. So I think the suggestion was a good one, that some thought be put into what the city's costs would be, because that's really the justification for a license fee, and presented for the council at the next meeting, where you can then set that number in the fee schedule.
But I just want the message to get out. I mean, I think we need to contact the 3 people who have signed up and said, there's going to be a fee and it's going to be sizable. So they don't end up investing in a lot of gummies. I mean, I've been in some conversations, and I mean, we have a local hemp provider that's providing this product right here in Kennewick County. And they're working on a product that they're going to be distributing. And I know the money they're talking about making, and it's a lot of zeros behind that first big number that starts. So, okay, I think we have direction. I think staff has direction. Councilmember O'Brien, do you want to withdraw your motion? I didn't hear a second.
Do you want to second it? It's what he said. In other words, let staff find out how much the cost is going to be.
But he said they were going to do that.
Right.
We will bring that back regardless.
Is there a motion on the table currently, actually?
There's a motion on the table to adopt what this is.
Right.
Now there's discussion here. Councilmember O'Brien is offering another motion to have staff research the numbers and bring it back to us. Staff is telling us they're going to research the number and bring it back to us. So if the motion dies for lack of a second, we're still getting the work done. So. Additional? Motion dies for lack of a second, although staff has affirmed that they will do the work that you asked in the motion to be done.
So I think with the motion on the table and then the subsequent discussion, it would be appropriate to just confirm with the maker of the motion and the seconder that they are both good with the changes to the penalty provisions we discussed.
Who made the motion and seconded it? I thought it was you made the motion, I thought it was seconded
Oh.
down here.
Rick and Julie.
We are good with the, you.
I didn't know there was one.
It's getting late. This is past my bedtime.
Who made the motion and the
What did I
second?
say?
Yeah, you're right.
Rick and Julie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought,
Yep.
it was Rick and Julie,
You
yes.
made a motion to approve as presented,
Pass this whole
but
thing, but now with the corrections and the
So with the corrections
increased
that we made,
violations.
That's fine.
okay, are you okay with it?
And I'm okay
Motion and
with,
second,
and I'm okay with
okay with
the
it?
increased violations.
Okay,
No.
motion,
Mr. Mayor.
oh, Councilmember Ross.
I just want to say, like, I'm confused as to, like, what the goal of the fee will end up being. Like, I feel like much of the conversation tonight has been based around trying to prohibit the sale of it. And I'll restate that again, I'm going to trust the personal freedoms of our citizens and allow for what the state legislature has determined to be a legal product to sell. Are there other fees where we're trying to prohibit the sale of some legal, product? And then it seems to be quite arbitrary in my mind, and perhaps based on preconceived notions that we have about what this product is. I don't know if we need some sort of further information about exactly what this product is. Are we all clear on what that is? Maybe that would be helpful before we pass further restrictions on this.
Yeah.
Councilmember Osmus.
My comments were directly addressed to what we think the time and effort is going to be by staff. And I feel like we already know, just from what's happened since the legislature passed this, the concerns that have already come to law enforcement and how much time that they've had to put into it. And so if we have 3 people selling, I think there's going to be numerous calls and action that is going to be required to address the issues around the sale of this product.
And you believe?
And I think a lot of it's subjective at this point. I agree with what you're saying.
And I think I appreciate the staff trying to bring us a fee that's based on the administrative costs of it, based on the law enforcement costs of it. I can appreciate that.
Additional comments to the motion? All in favor of the motion to set the public hearing for September 6th with the amendments recommended this evening, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Next, I'll entertain a motion to publish by summary.
So
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have consideration of approval of artificial turf for batting cages and bullpens at Clementson, Orange Field, and Recreation Fields at the Civic Center.
Good evening, Mayor, member of the council. We talked about the turf, the additional turf to be purchased for the batting cages and bullpens at Clementson Field and the recreation fields. Currently, right now, the Swanson Field project is at 94% built out. We have an estimated contingency balance of $49,000. To get the 3 rolls of turf for the Clementson Field, it would be about $8,223.75. The recreation field is also at 94% built out. We have $259,000 left in the contingency, and the cost for the 2 rolls of turf would be $5,482.50. So tonight's motion would be to approve a resolution to purchase artificial turf for the batting cages and bullpens for the LC Clemson Field and the recreation baseball softball complex in the amount of $13,706.25.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Osmus.
Just a quick comment. I just feel like Swanson Field really had to scale down what their hopes and dreams were for that facility, from their stadium to everything else. And if we can give them a little bit more of what they wanted for that complex, for some turf, for the batting cages, I think it's a good thing.
Additional comments or questions? Councilman Rosk.
I just want to say thanks for staying late with us.
Oh, no problem.
You're
I'll
not
be here
done
on the
yet.
6th too, asking for more. So,
Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
O'Brien. Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay.
That resolution passes. Any council members have community pride announcements?
Mayor, I do. In our special session that we had last week, we discussed having another one on the 22nd. So I would like the council to approve having that work session next Monday at the fire hall, 5:30 for our special session.
So moved.
And that's for the software review.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Oh, Councilmember Nelson.
Just a clarification, that's when the Second Street meeting is going to happen too, right?
Yes,
Same day. One's at 5:30, the other's at 7, right?
correct.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Butterfield.
Was it just Second Street that was invited, or was Third, Fourth, Fifth also invited?
Inviting everybody. It's open house.
Okay.
It's not, it's a public meeting, so it's everybody.
Well, who got the notices then?
The notices went to Second Street is where the notices went, but it's a public meeting, so it's publicly noticed that we're having the meeting.
Okay.
And they'll announce it on open mic tomorrow when they're on open mic.
Okay.
Additional comments or questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Are we addressing 2 parcels tonight or 1?
I was told 2.
Okay. At this time, the city is going to go in closed session pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05 sub 3C to consider offers or counteroffers for the city's purchase of and sale of real property. If you are to remain in the meeting, Leslie Valiant, Kyle Box, Justice Walker, Robert Scott, and council. Everybody else is excused.
Sorry, this keeps coming.